I saw it all in slow motion. Funny how the mind works. I was flying backward, falling. I saw a blurry figure, then the roof, then my feet and the roof at the same time. I hit, landing on my upper back first, terrible pain, a crunch, and blackness. What a damn nightmare. I groggily awoke, my head throbbed, my whole torso hurt. I had no idea where I was. I laid there for a few seconds before attempting to open my eyes. I squinted, seeing only a fluorescent light fixture, ceiling tiles. I closed my eyes again. My body was in massive pain, each breath agony. I felt like crying out, but laid there, trying to take stock of what was happening. The first attempt to turn my head told me that movement of any sort was not wise. An electric shock of pain shot down my spine. I tried to look sideways without moving, even that minimal movement hurt. Then I heard the voices. Was that what woke me up? Is he going to live, doctor? Asked the first voice. Yes, but when he will wake up is the question. He was showing signs of coming around earlier, then passed out again. We just need to be patient, said voice 2, who I assumed was the doctor. He's a lucky man, considering what happened. The MRI showed no cranial bleeding, but there's already a little swelling. He's certainly concussed. We'll have to keep an eye on the possibility of his brain swelling further. His left arm is broken in one spot, both the radius and ulna, and at another, the humerus. From the way his back looks, he hit the stairs at shoulder blade level and slid the rest of the way. His back is badly bruised. His suit coat kept him from being scraped raw. But still, probably a good thing he was tilted towards his left, or the gun he was carrying might have added to the damage. He might have fractured his sacrum or his hip. He came to rest after hitting the back of his head. It scraped and bled a lot. No stitches required. We cleaned the injury and bandaged it. I understand he stopped with his feet still up the stairs. He basically body surfed down until his head and shoulders hit the bottom, voice 1 affirmed. How he kept from tumbling, I have no idea. I'm guessing he went most of the way down in midair. It was about 8 or 10 steps, said voice 1. I didn't count, but I will need it for my report. So, no idea when we might talk with him? Okay, well, we have the woman getting checked out. She was pitching a fit about not wanting to be examined, but I saw some blood on her fingers, and I wanted to collect any evidence before it got washed away. Oh yeah, that brings up another point. The victim had 3 long gouges on his right forearm. Can you tell me which direction they were made from? Hand towards the elbow or the other way around? I closed my eyes and tried to calm my breathing. The monitor was still beeping faster than normal, but did not accelerate. I heard the curtain pulled back. I felt somebody fiddle with the tape on my arm. After a bit of poking, from hand towards the elbow, for sure, the doctor said. Which makes no sense if you consider the direction of his fall. Makes perfect sense if you think about it from a different perspective, said voice 1. His right coat sleeve was pushed up and bunched at his elbow, but I'll need to confirm with forensics. Hey, do you think I can get a cup of coffee while we wait and I make a few phone calls? We have a pot at the nurse's station. Sue, can you get the officer some coffee? Better make it 2, it seems his partner is here. I heard the curtain pulled back into its original position. So, what do you have? Asked the new person from the other side of the curtain. Voice 1 told the other man what the doctor had said about me. Well, we got both a man and woman downtown, said the second cop. Their stories coincide, but I don't believe it. It does not match what the witnesses say. How lucky is that? We happened to be a couple blocks away, about to eat, when the call came in. The responding officers were barely there when we pulled up. I'm glad they could check the victim out and leave us to look at a fresh scene. Yeah, voice 1. Did you see the video? Video? The girl in the apartment across the landing was showing her folks her new apartment when all the shouting started. They opened the door with their cell phones out and recording to see a big naked man and a naked woman standing on the landing. The man yells, "That'll show you your place, you stupid." They couldn't see what the two were looking at down the stairs, but they got that part clear as day. I mean, it was graphic. The two had obviously just been having sex. Yeah, lucky the witnesses saw who was there, said the second voice. One of them called 911. The young neighbor was squatting next to the victim when the first unit arrived. She pointed and said, "He is the guy who pushed this one. Don't let him get away." The guy was dressed, and coming downstairs, he was running. The woman was standing at the top of the stairs wearing a little robe and bawling. They both told stories with no mention of their being naked and having sex. According to them, they were innocently visiting, and the victim came in and attacked them, then ran out and fell over his own feet. Both men laughed. I lay there thinking about what I had just heard. As much as I heard, at least my brain was functioning. Maybe I could turn this around a bit. Would I be wrong to lie, to add a little to the story? Screw the a-hole who pushed me down the stairs. I could have died. Hell, I could still be majorly messed up. Let me go back 3 weeks to where it began. Well, not when it began, but when I became aware something out of the ordinary was going on. My wife, Linda, was in the shower. She'd left her phone on her makeup table. It pinged and lit up. I looked at it. "Hey, sweet cheeks," it began. Then the screen went dark. I tapped in her log and code and checked her recent messages. "Hey, sweet cheeks, I want some of that hot SX. How about tomorrow afternoon?" The message was from Linda's boss, Steve Harris. Steve was the broker who owned the real estate franchise where my wife worked as a sales agent. This was not the first time my wife had received an inappropriate text from the a-hole. Just a month prior, Linda was sitting on the couch when her phone pinged and she opened the text unseen by her. I walked up behind to bring her a glass of wine. "You looked fine this morning. I want some of that love as soon as we can get it on," it read. I about dropped the wine as I read that over her shoulder. I bristled. Linda neatly covered. She giggled. I bet he was texting his wife again. "You know her name is Julie, right next to mine in his contact list. He has messed up and sent me texts meant for her before." Her neck had turned bright red as she tapped a couple of icons. "Hey, stupid. Robert just walked up as you sent me the text you meant for your wife. If you're going to flirt with her via text, make sure who you are sending it to, okay?" I heard him on speaker. "Hey, dude, I'm so sorry," Steve said. "I'm trying to spice things up with my wife a bit, you know. I sure did not mean to send that to Linda." Linda giggled. "No problem, Steve. Oh, I know I looked fine today too, but this woman is reserved for my man Robert." She hung up and we laughed about it, both then and when we made love later that night. I'd all but forgotten the matter until now. If Steve had screwed up again, why was he texting his wife about tomorrow afternoon? Where was she tonight? I may be trusting, but I am not stupid. I realized my wife was cheating on me. I thought our relationship was solid, but apparently that was not the case. Linda and I met just a few months before we graduated college, both business majors. We had seen each other over the years, sharing the occasional class, but had not interacted socially. I was the typical nerd type, she the hot chick. We clicked once we actually got to know each other. I was not socially inept, far from it. I'd had my share of girlfriends, but in my own social circle. I just was not the buff, athletic dude you normally see with the hot chick. I stood all of 58 and might weigh 150 if I had rocks in my pockets. Not bad looking, according to my sister and her friends, but just not a stud. Of course, my sister and her friends did not get to look inside my pants. I used that line once when my sister Becky told me I was not a stud in front of a couple of her friends. She was embarrassed as they laughed. I told them I packed every bit as much in my pants as those big boys they were so fond of admiring. They laughed, as did I, but I knew that what I had compared favorably from observations in gym locker rooms. My claims were validated one day when I overheard Linda tell Becky, "You and your friends tease your brother and he teases back. But let me tell you, he packs every bit as much as anybody I've ever seen." Becky and her friends sputtered in embarrassment. It was not a large member my wife was seeking, it was money. We got by, but we were not rich. She made enough sales to pay her business expenses and have a little spending money, but she could not have supported herself on her commissions. I supported us with my sales rep job. After graduation, I had decided to continue my education and add accounting to the mix. My goal was to get my CPA and MBA and set up my own office. Working full-time, that was a slow process to get there. I worked my butt off. My company sent me out of town to service a few distant accounts each week. I would see one client in Greenfield in the afternoon, drive to Santa Rosa that night and spend the night, see the client there the next morning and drive home. I'd have the whole weekend to spend with my wife. Now that I was aware of a possible fox in the hen house, I began to pay attention. Steve and his wife were over a decade older, both about 40. They had twin boys finishing high school and a third, a freshman at the local university. Linda and I had barely even begun talking about raising little ones. I admittedly wanted some after 5 years together, 4 of them married. I was ready. We had been talking recently about her going off the pill and us working on getting her pregnant. She might have already stopped taking them. Now, suddenly, I was glad we had waited. I realized I'd never have a child with Linda. I had looked forward to a fun night. That was why she was in the shower getting freshened up. She knew I'd start with a kiss. Well, her shower was wasted. I would not touch her at all. Not anymore. I'm not one of those guys who go for one final SX with a cheating witch. I went to our spare room where we kept the computer and began to surf for information. When she came in to find me a few minutes later, she looked and smelled good. She had spritzed a little scent. The translucent little top did not hide a thing. She was hot. I got hard, and my little head asked me to go get busy. I almost changed my mind about having SX with her one last time. Then I remembered the text. Sorry, babe, not in the mood. Part of me wants you, but I'm feeling a little funny. My gut is acting up, I lied. She looked at me wide-eyed, and before she could say anything, I stood and rushed past her to the bathroom, making out like I had no time to wait. She called in to tell me she was going to bed and asked if I needed anything. I called out to tell her I needed time and would come to bed when I felt better. I had read accounts of how people put spy apps on their partners' cell phones to monitor their activity. I thought it was creepy. I mean, I know it is possible to commandeer a computer remotely, but you need to be a hacker or know one, or so I thought. It turned out to be far easier than I imagined. Many people would not think it proper to spy on a spouse, but it is totally legitimate to monitor a child. That is how the apps are advertised. Protect your kid from a possible predator. Monitor their cell phone activity. Know their location. Who knew it would be so easy? I hated liars, but I was going to be telling quite a few lies over the next few weeks, some deliberate falsehoods, some lies by omission. But cheating is a major lie, so screw the witch. I decided I had more than a short-term bug. I used my fake abdominal distress as a reason to get out of bed several times the next night and spend time in the bathroom down the hall. On one of those forays, I took Linda's cell phone with me to install the spy app and download her text files. I was new to this sneaky peep business, but Linda is a fairly light sleeper, so I wanted her to ignore my being out of bed repeatedly and for periods of time. As I monitored her cell, I found that while Steve was a prolific salesman himself, he was even more of a horn dog. Real estate agents are in and out of the office frequently, so they could get away together without any of their coworkers noticing. And they did, at least a couple times a week. They flirted by phone often, or the occasional text. I assumed the multiple calls were more flirting than business. I had been lucky to catch the text I did. Phone conversations were far more graphic. I kept multiple copies of one such conversation because it went into detail and provided a lot of information about their relationship. I did not need it to divorce Linda, which I fully intended to do soon, but I wanted undeniable proof she was a cheating witch. Let's meet at your apartment this Thursday when the cuck is out of town, Steve asked. I love to bend you over the back of your couch and kiss you from behind. Look, quit calling Robert a cuck. I've told you it's disrespectful, Linda said. Steve laughed and started to say something. And I've told you before, Robert is every bit as large as you, if not just a tad larger. You're just too rough. I love that intensity, which is why I keep coming back to you. Robert likes to make love more, but sometimes I just want it intense. Yeah, you scream when I pound away, Steve chortled. Julie used to love it too, but she says I get too wild, and she likes it better if she can get on top so she can control the action. I guess your boy just can't man up and take you like you want it. Well, your jackhammer Energizer Bunny act is what I want every now and then, like a couple of times a week. But making love is great. I should have no complaints. Robert gets with it on occasion, but when I start to hurt, he stops. You just keep kissing me until you're done. My guts are sore, but I love it. I'm madly in love with Robert, but sometimes I just want to have these wild sessions. Robert just has a nice balance of tickle and pain and does not try to mark me, Linda said. And if you call him a cuck one more time, you won't get any this week, at least not from me. You'll have to get on your knees and beg your wife. If you want to kiss me, you're going to have to wear a raincoat, and I am worried about that in case it breaks. Robert and I are going to have a baby. I hate raincoats, Steve groused. Well, it's that or no SX, Linda said. And in case the raincoat breaks, I'm going to have some spermicidal douches handy. Afraid my swimmers are better than the sea of Roberts? Steve laughed. Nice save there, Linda laughed. No, but I can't take the risk. Steve laughed. All babies look alike. I've had 3, and they were all ugly at first. And he'd be stuck if his name is on the birth certificate. That'd be funny to have him raise my kid. No, they don't. Babies are cute, and you need to remember he'd have a year to contest it, Linda said seriously. And you can bet if you divorced me because you were the father, I'd come after you for child support. You want to take the risk? Screw that. Maybe I ought to get snipped, Steve said. Julie certainly does not want more, and I don't want to give up that hot SX. You are a wild one. Well, snipped or not, Steve can have the 304, I thought. That conversation might not be admissible in court because at least one party has to be aware they are being recorded. It might even get me in trouble because of some civil rights violation, but I did not care. I wanted absolute proof Linda was cheating. I knew she would try to make me out to be the bad guy with friends and family. She'd claim the affair was all my imagination, or she only did it once or twice. How I was being unreasonable and not willing to forgive her a little indiscretion. Little indiscretion? These 3 weeks while I got my ducks in a row were really dampening my former love for my wife. Once I knew for sure, I started the process to get rid of her. The first thing I did was to pay off all our debts. I had some significant college loans. Linda's were relatively small, but I paid mine off first. We were always careful with credit card debt. Our cars were paid off. We had even started to set aside a little money for a house, since a mortgage was not that much more than what we paid for our apartment rent. I also began to stash a little cash. I knew I could not hide too much, as we did not have that much, but it made me feel better to get something over on the witch. My research told me I'd be paying alimony for a few years since she did not make enough selling houses. I hoped to minimize that a bit. I wondered if I paid my lawyer up front for his whole expected fee, if that would work to decrease our cash. I trimmed our cash reserve as much as I could. I started to have my paycheck diverted, but I knew I would still have to give Linda her half. I just did not want her taking more. I had seen and retained an attorney who was working on the papers. Once I had her served, the wood hit the fan. Now, back to that fateful day at the start of my story. I was supposed to be out of town. I had a coworker take care of those accounts the previous week as well, so I could attend to my private issues. In my spare time, I worked through possible scenarios. At first, I thought I wanted to be surprised and shocked to find them in bed when I came home unannounced. I envisioned running a naked Steve off at gunpoint, maybe even not letting him stop to pick up his clothes. I'd throw his car keys to him once he was outside in the parking lot, or just shoot his balls off. Then I fantasized about taking a tire iron to him, busting him across the head or backbone while he was pounding away, breaking some ribs or bruising a kidney. Any of that would mean jail time for sure. I could not explain the tire iron as anything other than a premeditated attack. All my friends were aware I had a concealed carry permit and frequently had a pistol on me always when I traveled. There was no way I would square off and go toe-to-toe with Steve in a fight. I was 58 and now weighed a whole 150, having gained a few pounds since college. Steve stood at least 62 or 3 and weighed 230. I know because he would brag about how he still weighed the same as he did when he played college ball. That crap about standing up and fighting like a man is just that crap. David was smart enough to not face Goliath on the battlefield armed the way everybody at the time considered fair combat. He got out his handy-dandy slingshot and nailed the bastard. Of course, nothing in the Bible calls that unethical or cheating. It was written how God guided David to win. I just wish I had been as smart as David. All my plans and daydreams went out the window when I unlocked my apartment door. I knew they were in there. I saw Steve's car parked out front next to Linda's. Later I would claim I did not recognize it. I was quiet when I opened the door, not jangling my keys as I returned them to my pocket. It would not have mattered, neither of the cheating a-holes would hear a sound over their grunting and wailing. Do me, kiss me, Linda's words hit me like a sledgehammer. All my plans were forgotten. She was bent over the back of the couch like they had described in the phone call I had recorded. He was standing behind her, jackhammering into her. I considered booting him in the balls from behind, but his legs were close together. Steve was just about to climax when I hit him in the side, knocking him off the witch. "You scum sucker," he screamed as he realized what had happened. I had not knocked him that far or that hard, just out of Linda. He was fast for a big man and grabbed me by the front of my suit coat. I tried to punch him to get away and get my pistol out, but a suit coat is pretty restrictive for fast, rapid movement like that, not like in the movies. Plus, once he grabbed me, I was going nowhere. He shook me like a pit bull with a possum. His arms were so much longer that my swings hit empty air. I started kicking, and I know at least one kick caught him in the balls, not hard enough to make him turn loose, though. He held on. By this time, Linda had turned around. She could tell I was reaching for my pistol, and she grabbed my right arm to stop me. I realized later that was why my right coat sleeve had been bunched up to my elbow, and her fingernails gouged the 3 furrows up my forearm. I was trying to shake her off. I had not shut the door when I came in. Steve half lifted me off my feet and charged me across the living room and out the door. He turned loose when he shoved me out into midair over the stairs. I listened to the cops talking about what they knew. I quickly formulated a plan. I hoped it worked out better than my plan to run a naked Steve off at gunpoint. I moaned loudly to let the hospital staff know I had regained consciousness. The doctor came in immediately to check me out. He had me wiggle fingers and toes and concluded I was basically intact, but told me to limit moving. No shit. Sherlock blinking hurt. The cops came in and asked if I was willing to tell them what happened. I told them almost the same story I related above. I knew my wife and her boss had an ongoing affair and was taking steps to divorce her. I did not expect to catch them in my apartment in the act, though. I told them the part about how I was dumb enough to knock Steve off my wife. The part I added was what Steve said after he grabbed me. He said, "You scum sucker, I'm going to kill you. If you happen to live, you'll know your place, you stupid." I said Linda grabbed my arm so I could not hit him or reach for my pistol. She said, "Careful, you know he has a gun." Shit, I can't hold him much longer. You're going to have to do something quick. Next thing I knew, all 3 of us were rushing across the living room and out the door. I'm not sure when Linda turned loose, but I was so far off balance, no way could I get my pistol. Then I was sailing out into the air backward, and then the crunch. "I guess he threw me down the stairs," I said. "That is all I remember." "I hope the doc is right and I'm not paralyzed," I said. Did I feel bad about lying, about adding the part where he said he was going to kill me, or Linda telling him to do it quick? Nope. Screw both of them. I just hoped there was no evidence to the contrary. Thinking about it, I wondered if they ever videoed themselves having SX. That would be bad. Forensics actually supported my story. Steve claimed I attacked him, and he defended himself. He was visiting Linda, one of his agents, because she was feeling bad and he was concerned. I must have got the wrong idea about what was happening. Then, after he pushed me away and yelled at me, I turned tail and ran out the door. I tripped at the top of the stairs, hit the railing, and fell down the stairs. Linda agreed, just adding Steve pushed me hard to get me going. She grabbed my arm to keep me from punching Steve at the beginning, and that was how I got scratched. The investigators found my suit pants were spattered with Steve's fluids, which proved I was very close to him, and there were several smears of fluids on my right pants leg, which showed I had kicked him in the groin. I was facing him at the time, not running. They did not initially charge Steve with attempted murder, but did with assault. Steve posted bail. He did not have the full amount, of course, so he used a bail bondsman. The 10 charge would still cost him $5,000 out of pocket. I wondered if he felt the piece of ass he got was worth it. I would not know about any of this for a while. Even my brothers conspired to not tell me everything they had heard until the doctors said I was out of the woods. They wanted me to remain calm. Shortly after I made my statement to the cops, I had an episode and passed out. To me, I had just closed my eyes and no time had passed at all. I awoke in a semi-dark room. I laid there for a bit, thinking about the conversation I was having with the cops. I had already decided how I was going to respond to my cheating wife and Steve if and when I saw them again. They were not only cheaters, but now they wanted me dead. I would treat them accordingly. Just before I passed out, I had planned to shoot Steve if he ever approached me. I'd claim I thought he was coming back to finish the job. Okay, so I like to fantasize about that. It's never going to happen. A nurse was in the room. I did not notice the other person until she stepped close. It was Linda. I began yelling, "Get her out! She tried to kill me! Get her out!" One of my brothers rushed in to find out what was going on. Linda was shocked and began crying. "No, no, no," she wailed. "I did not hurt you. I love you. You helped the a-hole throw me down the stairs," I yelled. They ushered Linda out. She was bawling and protesting the whole way. Okay, so I was being a prick. I did sort of want to talk to her. I wanted to hear her explain how she wanted intense sex so bad she would go look for it somewhere instead of talking to me. If she wanted rough role play on occasion, I would have been happy to oblige, but I would never condone her cheating. The doctors kept me in the hospital under close observation for a whole week because of my concussion. They were afraid I'd be out somewhere and my brain would start swelling. My two brothers visited regularly and even camped out in my room the first couple of days. They could barely believe what I said about Linda. Finally, I whispered to John that I exaggerated her role in helping the a-hole try to kill me. "I can always back off that a bit later," I said, "but for right now, I want the witch to suffer. She cheated, she destroyed our marriage and my trust." "Tell Dave what I said. I am paranoid about recordings, so will not say anything out loud here." John thought that part was funny. The day I got out of the hospital, I told him the details of how I bugged Linda's phone. "If you want, you can tell her I am hurt and angry, but I will talk to her when I am strong enough." Yeah, give the witch a little hope, I thought. Like she gave me a little hope of a happy future before she trounced it. I was angry, but I loved the witch, which made the whole thing hurt even more. One of the visitors I allowed was Julie, Steve's wife. She came to see me as soon as she heard I woke up, which was a day after the event. Of course, she heard parts of what had happened. When charges are filed, the testimony and evidence is not publicized. She wanted to know why Steve had been arrested for my assault. As you can imagine, Steve had not been too open about the situation. He had given her the same line he had given the police, how he had been visiting one of his agents when her husband came home. Linda was wearing a robe, and I jumped to conclusions and thought the worst. We got into a scuffle, and I had fallen down the stairs. He was accused of pushing me but was innocent. I thought his story was ludicrous. Obviously, he knew nothing about the video taken or suspected there might be forensic evidence. I wondered if the man was delusional or just hopeful the neighbors would not be questioned. I told her they were having sex when I walked in the door. "Steve said you would claim he was having an affair with your wife, but it was all innocent," she said. "I'm not buying that. What I want to know is, do you have proof? I have a prenup. I get 70 of the communal assets if he cheated and I can prove it. Leave some for me. I plan to sue him for whatever he has left after his criminal trial," I said. "You need to contact an attorney and file for divorce to lock your share of your assets so he cannot use that for his defense. I have an audio recording of them talking about their affair, plus copies of a few texts, but there is also a video of both Steve and my wife standing on the landing of my apartment just after he threw me down the stairs. Both of them are naked. On top of that is my testimony, but if that is not enough, the clothes I was wearing at the time might have some evidence on them. Hard to imagine I could get into a scuffle with a naked man who had just ejaculated all over and not have something on me." "You have all that?" she asked, shocked. I nodded. I told her I knew Steve liked rough pounding sex. That convinced her immediately I had everything I said. "I'm going to see my lawyer as soon as I leave here. Please help me get the rest of that evidence as soon as you can," she assured me. "Julie, I don't think either Steve or Linda realize just how much evidence there is against them. They told a lie and are sticking to it. They told the cops I misjudged the situation and overreacted, and that is what got me hurt. I'll be willing to bet Steve is out there right now doing as much damage control as he can. He might be hiding money, but from what I understand, you can get that back. Hopefully you can fix it so whatever he forfeits to the bail bondsman is taken out of his share and not yours. She gave me a hug and wished me well before she left. I had met her before when Steve had parties for his agents, like at Christmas and other holidays. She was nice. She did not deserve the storm coming her way. I didn't either. The day after I got out of the hospital, I was sitting at my family's fishing camp. I planned to take as much medical leave as I could, then I would burn my vacation time. My boss knew the situation and told me he was working on a way I could work remotely a couple of hours a day as I recuperated and still draw my regular pay. I thought about how I lied and compounded their offense of cheating into a crime. Then I reconsidered. I did take a backward tumble down a stairway. It was not due to my own clumsiness. I was pushed forcefully. Maybe Steve only wanted me out of the way so he could get his pants on without getting shot. But I really did not care. I was going for the jugular on his ass. That morning I was very, very busy. I canceled our credit card. I left Linda her half of the balance, which was not much since I had paid our debts. I had not wanted to tip my hand too early, so I waited. Now it was time to finish it. I might have to pay it later, but for now, I could make things as uncomfortable for Linda as I could. The rent and utilities were all paid up, but I was not going to provide a penny for Linda to eat or for a drop of gas for her car, not until ordered to do so by the court. Julie, Steve's wife, had moved swiftly. Despite thinking he might try to hide money, he apparently thought his line of bullshit was enough, and he had nothing to fear. I was a jealous husband who let his imagination run away with him. She took her 70 of the available cash and had their investment accounts locked, but I wanted answers. I called Linda and told her where I was. She had called my brothers several times while I was in the hospital, begging for me to meet with her. I told her she could drive out that afternoon. I warned her she better come alone. If she brought Steve so he could try to convince me to drop the charges or some such nonsense, I would drop him where he stood, but with a bullet. If I saw him, I would assume he was coming after me. I said this almost hoping they were recording what I said. I wanted it on record. I was not going to risk another attack. It was a tearful meeting. I will admit I hated losing the woman I loved, but not as much as before. I was sure she loved me, but not enough to not cheat. Crossing the gap between fidelity and being loyal, she missed that boat. "I am so glad you let me come out so we can talk," she said as she parked. "You know I was not helping Steve try to kill you," she began. I shrugged. I invited her inside. I claimed I was feeling weak and needed to sit and asked her to get us drinks. Of course, she knew the house well, having been there many times. As I listened to her get the beers out of the fridge, I went to the living room, a small area that served as the communal gathering area that adjoined the kitchen and served as a dual purpose. I tapped the icons on my laptop and cell phone to begin the video recordings. Both were focused on the chair where I intended her to sit. I sat down and waited. "I'm wondering if you were trying to get me to say something on a recording," I began. She assured me she had not. "My cell phone is in my purse," and to prove I have nothing on me, without another word, she stripped naked to my total astonishment. "Want to stick a finger up me to do a cavity search to show I don't have a bug hidden up there?" she asked, moving her hips. She was smiling now. This was a kinky game in her mind, and she was all for it. I would have been too if she had not been screwing her boss. I told her she might want to get dressed while we talked. "Screw that," she declared. "I'll stay naked. You might need to give me a towel so I don't leave a snail trail on the chair." "Are you sure you don't want to feel me up in case I have a recorder hidden up there?" she asked, grinning. She was not being sarcastic. I could tell she honestly wanted to play. The woman was hot. She was fully aware of the effect she had on me. I knew she was playing me. She had an agenda. "Where do you want to start?" she asked. "Let's start with why." "No, not why you decided to cheat. I want to know why you were willing to help that son of a bitch kill me," I spat. I sucked in my breath, trying to control myself. I wasn't trying to help him, Linda said tearfully. I was trying to help myself. I had no idea he was going to do that. I wanted to stop you from shooting him. Even when he pushed you outside, I thought he was going to close the door and we'd get dressed. Then we could deal with the problem. But then he threw me down the stairs. I finished for her. She nodded. And you went inside and concocted a story to cover for him. You lied to protect the man who tried to kill me. She looked at me, her facial expression a combination of horror and guilt. She nodded again. Yes, I thought. I was afraid you were dead, she said. He pushed you so hard you just flew out into the air. I looked down and you were not moving. Your eyes were not even closed. I was terrified. You did not even check on me. The police told me when they arrived. Cheryl from next door was kneeling next to me. But you were up on the landing in a robe, just crying, I said. You went inside, the a-hole got dressed, and you put on a robe. I guess you made up a quick story about how I came home to find you in a robe with your boss. He had just come over to check on you because you called in sick. I got the wrong impression and attacked him. He defended himself, and when he came at me, I ran like a chicken, tripped and fell down the stairs. All an accident. I didn't describe it that way, Linda said. Then she paused. How do you know what we said? Because the cops interrogated me, I said. Two people told one story, I told another. I had a head injury, so they wanted to make sure I could not have misinterpreted things. I noticed they just charged Steve with assault, not attempted murder yet. I thought, tell me why you lied your ass off for the son of a bitch, helping him get off. I was scared, Linda declared. I'm sorry. I did not know if you were even alive. Steve told me that if you had a head injury and were still alive, you might not even remember how you got hurt. We heard the sirens, and I did not have time to go get dressed. I just had my little robe. We made up a quick story and went out. Steve thought he might get away. If he did, I was going to say it was you and I having an argument and you tripped. There were so many holes in her story. I did not even mention Cheryl from next door, and her parents were at least witnesses to her and Steve standing nude on the landing, if not the actual assault. You were willing to go that far to cover for his butt? I asked, aghast. She nodded. He said he'd make it up to me, but if the truth came out, he would lose everything, and we'd both go to jail. Him for throwing you down the stairs and me for helping cover, Linda sobbed. If you were alive, it would be your word against ours. We weren't doing anything, so we had to keep up the lie. Even after we found out you'd be okay, Steve kept saying maybe you'd have amnesia. You remember everything, don't you? Every detail, she said. You were talking about him losing most of his money because of the prenup with his wife, aren't you? You know I already told her what I saw. She needs proof to invoke the prenup. Your word is not enough, Linda said. Steve asked me to tell you he will pay you off if you change your story about him pushing you down the stairs deliberately and about us having SX. He will give us $50,000, $25,000 each. We can use it for counseling. I'll quit my job and we can get back together. I had not expected this. I know I must have had an incredulous look on my face. Do you really think I would ever cover for him? Plus, there is no way he can get that kind of money without his wife finding it. You gotta know she is checking their financials. He won't be able to buy a candy bar without her knowing, I said. He already has it in a secret account, Linda said. He has been hiding money in an offshore account for years, Royal Bank in Grand Cayman. He has been putting money in an account there using his oldest boy's name and social security number. He called it his retirement fund. He says he will give us some. All you have to do is change your story. Please, Robert. We can get back to where we were and have a nice little nest egg. Steve means nothing to me. He was just a good time. You are what I want. I want a family with you, she pleaded. I started chuckling. Do you not see all the holes in your story? I said, shaking my head. First of all, I'd have to lie about what happened. Linda told me I could say I was confused and maybe Steve was just coming at me and I panicked. Do you really think he would pay either of us a nickel once I change my story? I asked. He'd laugh his ass off about how he got over on me again. First he made me a cuck, and now I would be a dumb cuck who changed my story. He knows I'd never be believed if I changed my story back later. Plus, why in hell would he ever confess to you he has been hiding money for years? He is not that dumb, I said. He knows you are gullible and hopes I am too. If it were true, he'd keep it a total secret and not even tell his own mother." Linda looked at me like the lights were coming on. Then she shook her head. "I'm sure we can trust him." I told her, before I even considered something like that, I'd have to see the bank transfer, including the right routing and account numbers and bank name proving the account exists, and then I might consider letting him go for $100,000. "Okay, now for part two," I said. "Why did you let that guy in your pants in the first place? What did I do to deserve that? Not man enough for you anymore?" She teared up slightly. "How long have you known? When did you find out?" I shook my head silently. "You did nothing wrong. We had a great marriage, an active SX life. You and I had SX 3 times a week at least until you got sick with that stomach bug and then cut me off. Oh, I am so stupid." "That is when you found out." She looked at me tearfully and continued. All this time she had made no attempt to sit ladylike, not spreading her legs. She sat casually, her crotch open for display. Now she got embarrassed and reached down to put on her panties and shirt. "Okay," I said, breaking the silence. "When did it begin?" "About 3 months ago. We did not have SX at the beginning. I mean, not even once a week. I'm not even sure why I thought to start. I mean, we had no problems. Sure, Steve flirted. He flirts with everybody. Hell, he'd flirt with you. Only he would call it getting friendly and establishing a rapport. I really can't say when that turned sexual. Well, that is not right. A lot of what Steve said had a sexual context. I think it was one day when he said he was unhappy with his SX life at home. He hinted he wanted to talk to somebody, and like a fool, I listened. I know now where it led. It was a trap. I'm not sure Steve intended it as a trap or not. Thinking about it now, I wonder if he did it with other girls before me. But at the time, I found it arousing just to hear him talk. He told me his wife preferred to make love, not get down and dirty like they had years ago. He missed the wild, pounding, animalistic SX they had when they first got together. I could not help it. I was aroused as hell. That night, I jumped your bones. I did not even need any warming up. I climbed on top of you and rode you to a couple of orgasms. You were happy to help me. You did not even ask what got into me. Well, you did, but I did not tell you the whole truth. I just told you I wanted you to screw me and make me yours, and you did. I have thought about that night a lot since. Just the memory of that night has me on the verge of climax. Linda paused to see if I took the bait. As much as I really wanted to, I sat in my chair clenching. She took a few deep breaths and continued. "I wanted that high again, not a drug high, a sexual high," Linda said. "That was over a weekend, and we screwed like rabbits the whole time. I remembered it, so did I. It was a great weekend. My wife was all over me. We did nothing but have SX and then rest and eat a little so we could screw more." The next week, Steve and I talked. I did not tell him about us screwing our lights out, not at first. He told me he had one good, hard SX session, and Julie wanted the rest to be sensual lovemaking. I was aroused enough. I did what I swore I would never do. I talked about us having SX. I told him we had a wonderful time the whole weekend. That week you and I had SX probably every night. It was all good, but none of it was the mind-blowing SX we had the previous weekend. Steve said he could give me that any time, Linda said. I laughed, but after a few days I started to wonder if he could. I wanted that hard-pounding SX so bad, Linda admitted. The more I thought about it, the more I craved it. You did me hard during that weekend. We had. Steve and I had shared stories up to that point, but had not touched. Finally, one day after Steve all but begged me, I offered to let him try to get me off. That was my downfall, Linda offered quietly. Steve does not make love. He screws like a demon or does nothing. I did not care about what he likes. After the first time we were together, I did not kiss him, blow him, or do anything else. I let him have me. He pummeled me. There was not a bit of making love in what we did. And you got off on it, I accused. Linda nodded. Yes, it was hot. I was like an addict, Linda admitted tearfully. I loved you. I still do. Our SX is great, but something about Steve doing me like that got to me. Somehow, with him, I could disassociate myself from reality and enter some make-believe world where it was all about the physical act, and nothing about love or emotion. I could have this wild SX with him and then come home and be the loving wife with you. I never thought it would get out of control. I didn't think I would get caught. I know it was selfish and wrong. I just couldn't stop myself. You couldn't stop yourself, I repeated. Do you hear yourself, Linda? You sound like a junkie. I know, she whispered. I know it sounds pathetic, but it's the truth. I am ashamed of myself. I never meant for it to go this far. I never meant to hurt you. You didn't mean to hurt me. You think that makes it better? I asked, incredulous. You betrayed me in the worst possible way, repeatedly, and you want me to believe you never meant to hurt me. I don't expect you to forgive me, Linda said quietly. I don't deserve it, but I do love you and I want to try to make things right. I laughed bitterly. Make things right? You think we can just go back to the way things were? You think I can ever trust you again? Linda's eyes filled with tears. I don't know. I just want a chance to try. Please, Robert, give me a chance. I shook my head. I can't do that, Linda. I can't go back. Too much has happened. What are you going to do? She asked, her voice trembling. I'm going to divorce you, I said firmly. I'm going to take everything I can from you and make sure you and Steve pay for what you've done, Linda sobbed. Please, don't do this. I can change. I can be the wife you deserve. You had your chance, I said coldly. You blew it. Linda looked at me, her face crumpling. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I stood up, feeling the anger and betrayal coursing through me. Save your apologies. They mean nothing to me now. I walked out of the room, leaving her there, naked and crying. I didn't care anymore. She had made her bed, and now she would have to lie in it, alone. I called my lawyer the next day and told him to move forward with the divorce. I wanted it done as quickly as possible. I wanted to be free of Linda and her lies. I wanted to start over, to build a new life without the shadow of betrayal hanging over me. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal proceedings and emotional turmoil. I stayed at the fishing camp, avoiding any contact with Linda. My brothers were supportive, helping me through the tough days and nights. I focused on healing, both physically and emotionally. Linda tried to reach out to me several times, but I ignored her. I didn't want to hear her excuses or apologies. I just wanted her out of my life. Steve tried to contact me too, offering money to change my story, but I refused. I wasn't going to let him buy his way out of this. He would face the consequences of his actions just like Linda. The day the divorce was finalized was a turning point for me. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was free. I could move on and start fresh. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I wouldn't make the same mistakes again. I would be more careful, more vigilant. I would never let anyone betray me like that again. As I packed up my things at the fishing camp and prepared to leave, I felt a sense of closure. The past was behind me, and a new chapter was beginning. I didn't know where I was headed, but I was ready to face whatever came my way. I was stronger now, more resilient. I had survived betrayal and come out the other side, and I knew I would never let anyone take advantage of me again. Thanks for watching. What would you do if you found out your spouse was cheating on you with their boss? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life betrayal stories. See you in the next video.
Clara sat at the dining table, going over her upcoming presentation one last time. She had read it repeatedly, looking for mistakes, but everything was in order. Her notes, spread across 3 pages, contained every key point and anticipated objection. Feeling assured, Clara realized that while her plan might not be flawless, it couldn't outright fail. She allowed herself a brief smile, but the stakes were too high to take lightly. She couldn't afford to risk it. Content with her preparation, she shifted her thoughts to timing. If she explained things slowly to David, it might sink into his analytical mind, and he could understand her reasoning and agree. But that approach would give him time to challenge her logic. After a decade together, Clara knew his mind as well as her own and understood that in a battle of wits, he would likely come out on top. So, a gradual approach was out. That left her preferred strategy shock and awe. Hit him fast, hit him hard, and secure his agreement before he had time to resist. His approval was essential. Without it, nothing could move forward. That was the part with no risk. Nervously, Clara stood up and moved around the kitchen, distracting herself from the pain she knew she was about to inflict on her husband. He didn't deserve it, but without it, she wouldn't get what she believed she deserved. She had to do it. She assuaged her conscience by reminding herself that he had forced her into this corner where she had no choice. Ergo, it was his fault. Clara looked around the kitchen, trying to remember the last time she'd been there alone on a weekday. It had to be at least 5 months. Up until then, it had always been her getting home first and greeting the kids when they got home from school. Why had that changed? Simple. His name was Alex. Alex was brought in 5 months ago from another office as her boss. For the first month, they'd maintained a standard boss-subordinate relationship. That changed when he asked her to work late one day. After finishing the work, he thanked her by taking her out for dinner. They discovered they had much in common. Although he was 5 years her junior and single, they shared many interests, such as the arts, movies, and fashion. Slowly, the compliments about her work and eventually her looks increased. She was flattered, both as a proud employee and as a woman who was starting to worry about the effects of time on her attractiveness. Soon, it became a regular thing. Within a month, all pretense of work was dropped, and they hung around after hours just talking, either at work or over coffee somewhere. Within another month, his complaints of being lonely or hating to eat by himself led her to skip dinner with her family and discreetly go to restaurants with him with increasing frequency. By 3 months in, that included movies and shows as well. It also included many weekends, while she showed the out-of-towner the local sites. She covered it at home by saying there was a promotion in the offing, and she wanted to stand out from the crowd by putting in the extra hours. She was only slightly ashamed by this ruse, which was made worse by her husband, David, fully supporting her newfound ambition. She knew it was wrong for a married woman to behave this way, but after 16 years of being a selfless mother, she felt she deserved to do something for herself, even if just for a couple of hours a day. When she was with Alex, she felt appreciated and more alive. Sure, her husband said he appreciated her all the time, but there were only so many ways for him to say it, so it had gotten stale over the years. When she increased her workload, David had quietly stepped up and taken over the household duties. After the 3rd time he came home to find the kids home alone, he voiced the opinion that he thought it inappropriate for their youngest, at 14, to be unsupervised. Clara was still embarrassed at how she'd snapped at that, yelling at him that if he wasn't comfortable with it, he could reduce his hours. She woke the next day to find him already gone to work at 5 a.m. That night she came home to find him already there, helping the kids with their homework and with dinner started. With only a slight tremble in her voice, she'd thanked him for supporting her career. When her weekend work started, David had risen again and taken over the main responsibility of entertaining the kids. Far from finding it a chore, he seemed to love it and rediscovered his purpose in life. The kids loved reconnecting with their dad, and much fun was had by all. Even their eldest, at 16, gave up some of his time hanging out with his friends to go places with dad and siblings. Until 2 months ago, Clara's relationship with Alex had been purely platonic. Then one Saturday, after a nice lunch and a shower of compliments, Alex had suggested getting a hotel room for the afternoon. Clara had laughed at his joke before noticing with dismay he wasn't smiling. That had shaken her to the core. She quickly made her excuses and left. All the way home, she'd mentally cursed Alex for endangering their friendship by trying to make it sexual. He should have known she would never cheat on her husband. Wednesday at work was devastating for Clara. Alex treated her coldly and professionally. By the end of the week, she was really missing him. There had been no deep and meaningful conversations, no lunches, and absolutely no compliments, even though she'd hung back after work every single day. She recognized the compliments and other affirmations of her professional and womanly strengths had become very important to her ego. Sure, David was attentive and complimentary, but it just wasn't the same. 2 things happened that week that should have screamed obsession to Clara. The first was on Wednesday when she came home to a partially completed dinner. David asked her to finish it while he picked their eldest up from soccer practice. When he returned, Clara was still sitting where she'd been when he left. Dinner was late. That triggered the first of their conversations. David questioned whether the focus on work was worth it. In front of the children, she chewed him out, taking all her frustrations of being ignored by Alex out on David. Shed calmed down by the time they went to bed. She denied any problems when David asked if they were okay. Before the conversation was even finished, David saw her mind was focused somewhere else. Consequently, he didn't even try for some intimacy. All the knockbacks were getting a little demeaning. On Saturday afternoon, Alex came and apologized to Clara. He excused his behavior as being prompted by having close contact with such a beautiful, desirable woman and being lonely. Clara forgave him but reminded him she was a married woman who intended to remain faithful to her husband. Alex responded by asking Clara if any of her colleagues would be able to relieve his frustration. This triggered every possessive instinct within her. She quickly replied in the negative. They parted good enough friends that she agreed to sneak off and take in lunch and a show the next day. The second obsession trigger occurred when Clara arrived home that Saturday night. David and the kids were packing for camping. When she asked what was going on, they replied this long weekend trip had been planned for a month. They all stared at her incredulously when she denied all knowledge of it. She simply didn't believe them when they reminded her little else had been talked about over dinner all week. In her opinion, they were unreasonable when they refused to reschedule to the following weekend, saying that this was the last long weekend before the winter set in. In the end, a disgruntled family left without her, and a very upset Clara stayed home alone. Her only solace was their absence gave her 3 days to make up with Alex. It hit her hard when, after the show the next day, Alex announced he was unavailable Sunday and Wednesday. Clara tried to contact her family to meet them wherever they were, but they were obviously in a Noservice area. Clara was still upset when they returned. She didn't want to lay into David for not knowing where they had gone just in case they told her, and she hadn't listened. She turned him down for intimate contact that night on the ground. She had to be fresh for work. Vague alarm bells went off in her head when David suggested her ambitions were leading to her estrangement from her own family. By the time Head recovered from the chewing out she gave him over this, she was back to planning her week with Alex. She woke with a start before 3 a.m. It suddenly hit her what damage this weekend and the conversation the previous night was doing to her perfect marriage and family. She felt a chill at the thought of David leaving and forcing her to raise the children on her own. This was nothing compared to the thought of losing the wonderful, loving, considerate man she'd chosen as a life partner. Vowing to cool her extramarital friendship, she snuggled up to her husband. He felt wonderful in her arms. She considered waking him up in that special way she used to when they were much younger but decided against it. The poor man had to be up in less than 2 hours. Subconsciously, David must have felt her intimate need, so he came up for a big hug when she walked in the door later that night. Back under Alex's spell by then, Clara hardly returned it. This set the scene for the next month. Within a week, things with Alex were back to normal. Her marriage and family were as well. However, it was the new normal where the four of them laughed, joked, and interacted while Clara distractedly sat outside it all, totally unaware of the worried looks David threw her way many times a night. Finally, David cracked and begged her to give up on the promotion. He reiterated his love for her and confessed his terror at the effect all this extra work was having on their family. Unfortunately, he couldn't have picked a worse day to bare his soul. Just that day, Alex had finally re-announced his wish to take their friendship to the next level, subtly but firmly making their continued friendship contingent on her agreeing. Clara was very distracted. The thought of losing all those ego-boosting compliments made her shudder. As David begged and pleaded, Clara was debating what to do. It was a complete no-brainer. If it came down to a straight choice between Alex and her husband, David would win. But there wasn't a lot she wouldn't do to avoid making the choice. She needed both of them, one for her need for stability, the other to bolster her flagging early 30s ego. Long after her husband had lapsed into silence, Clara was using her considerable intelligence to find a risk-free solution. By 2 a.m., she had it. The very next night, she explained her plan to Alex, reiterating she would never cheat on her husband. She laid it all out. She would lure David into having a threesome where Alex would just happen to end up as the third wheel. The men had never met, so it would simply be a matter of seemingly choosing Alex at random. If that worked, she'd work on a way of getting some solo time with Alex later, with David's blessing. It wouldn't be cheating. She did warn Alex it would take a while to talk David around and asked him to be patient. Alex didn't reply immediately. He considered the time had already invested in this pursuit. He had complete faith that once her artificial line had been crossed, the floodgates would be open, and she would be his whenever he wanted her if that is what he chose to do. Warning her he wouldn't wait forever, he readily agreed. Clara was so grateful she didn't object when he kissed her properly for the first time. She drew the line after several minutes when he firmly cupped her left breast in his hand. Angry at her own excitement, she pushed his hand away, reminding him of her commitment to be faithful. They went to dinner. She wasn't particularly nervous about raising the subject with David. They'd always been open and honest about their fantasies and had role-played more than a few over the years. She was too tired to raise it that night, preferring to relax after David was asleep. The next night, the atmosphere just didn't feel right, so she again waited for David to go to sleep. This time, as she relaxed, she couldn't help a small moan escaping. Her imagined coupling with Alex was just so enticing. With a small amount of horror, she was interrupted by David rolling towards her. "This is a bit unfair, isn't it?" "Why? What's unfair?" "You lying there pleasing yourself after knocking me back for the last few months." Clara was shocked. "Surely it couldn't have been that long?" "Has it really been that long, darling?" "Too bloody right it has. Since you started going for that promotion, you've either been too tired, too grumpy, or simply told me to leave when I try to start something." Even feeling as chagrined as she did, Clara still recognized this was a golden opportunity to raise the subject she wanted to. She spent a few minutes justifying to herself the effect her obsession with Alex was having on her marriage. Then she sought a way to open the conversation. She was so busy she didn't take note when David sighed and turned away again. She realized bringing up the idea of a threesome after a 4-month drought might affect David's ego. It might imply that he alone just didn't do it for her anymore. No, the safer path was to re-establish relations with David first. She rolled towards him and tugged him to her. Once on his back, he began snoring. Clara was too embarrassed to even continue relaxing. She had to get this out of her system shortly before it did any damage to her marriage. Clara worried. Until Alex came into her life, there was absolutely nothing wrong with her marriage or her intimate life. After 2 days of inaction, Alex was a little upset with Clara. The next day, she had to kiss him again to stop him criticizing her. This time, he behaved and didn't go for a grope. It did make her eager enough to kiss David deeply when she got home and rub his back while doing it. David's eyes lit up. They didn't even wait for the kids to go to bed. As soon as dinner was over, they retired to the little outdoor shed David had built to house their jacuzzi. It was his solution to maintaining a healthy relationship as their children got older. Once inside, David was eager to please her. After her commenting on his impatience, David defended himself by saying he didn't want to give her time to change her mind. David was considerate as usual, but Clara only managed to reach her peak when she closed her eyes and remembered Alex's touch that afternoon. The next morning, Saturday, David woke her in that special way she used to love, with his tongue caressing her skin. He no doubt thought she put the pillow over her face to stifle her sounds. In reality, even with her eyes closed, she had trouble pretending David was Alex. It was a pleasant but confusing experience for Clara. That night, she felt bold enough to broach the touchy subject with her husband. After complimenting his performance over the last 24 hours, she delicately raised the idea that after so many years, they were getting a little stale, and she had become a bit obsessed with the idea of a threesome. With his open and honest outlook on life, David immediately suggested they role-play it. This was going better than Clara expected, so it was back to the jacuzzi. After every session, they collapsed on the custom-provided mattress, exhausted. In fact, the renewed intimacy with David almost made Clara give up her plan. By a week and a half into what she thought of as David's conditioning period, Alex was getting very impatient, and the compliments were definitely drying up. She found herself having to kiss him practically every day or two, just to keep him interested. Eventually, even that wasn't enough, and she felt Alex withdrawing again. She knew she had to advance her timetable. 2 days later, after another marathon session in the jacuzzi shed, Clara thought she finally had the courage to ask the question this had all been leading up to. David beat her to it. "Darling, the last few weeks have been great. It's been a huge turn on doing you while our guest joins in. Do you think you would be open to her as well? How can we role-play that?" Clara recoiled in shock as she realized the last 2 weeks of what seemed like total connectedness had actually been a huge disconnect. What? You think I want a threesome with another woman? Isn't that what this has all been about? David sounded genuinely confused. Clara realized they'd never talked details. She couldn't blame him for the misunderstanding. No, David. I was thinking about another man. Oh. David realized there was no time like the present. Stealing her courage, she launched into her prepared speech. Listen, honey, the last few weeks have been real exciting for me. Is there any chance we can think about doing it for real with an actual man? I mean, David actually gave this the serious consideration he thought it deserved. Well, Clara, off the cuff, I'd have to say it would almost certainly be a bad move. I can't see any good coming from it. I thought the idea of a threesome with another woman turned us both on. I've got to tell you, the idea of you with another man does nothing for me. What if it was really important to me? Again, David thought. I'd have to think about it, Clara. Just thinking out loud. About the only way I would ever consider bringing in another guy would be if another time we invited another girl. No, you wouldn't have to do anything with her, Clara. I could. I said no, David. The mere thought of you with another woman just makes me so angry. Forget it, David. It's never going to happen. Then you have answered your own question, Clara. Another guy isn't going to happen either. Clara heard in his tone the end of her plans. There was no way she was going to compromise, so David wasn't even going to think about it. What the hell was she going to tell Alex tomorrow? As expected, Alex was not a happy camper. He criticized Clara for not trying hard enough, then snubbed her for the rest of the week. As usual, Clara took out her frustrations on David. On Wednesday, Alex asked her to stay behind so they could talk. He seemed genuinely sad when he told Clara he could no longer stand being around such a beautiful woman who was unavailable to him. Her husband had forced her into a position where she had to choose between them, and she had chosen her loser husband. He respected that, even though it hurt. He kissed her goodbye, asked her to remember him fondly, and knew she would understand their relationship had to return to a professional one. He then turned to walk away. Wait. Alex stopped and turned. Give me another week, please. What do you have in mind, Clara? I don't know, Alex. Just give me a week to plan something. With another kiss, they parted. David noted Clara was back to her old distracted self again that weekend. He thought about her hot and cold mood swings over the last few weeks and about her recent obsession with threesomes. Now he had another thing to worry about. Why had her lipstick been smeared when she came home late on Saturday? Time to do some digging. Not having participated in any family activities over the weekend gave her more time to think. Clara excitedly cornered Alex after work on Wednesday. His eyes lit up as she explained her plan. Halfway through, he interrupted. You know, Clara, he may want something in return for this. Well, there are things I'm willing to give him and things that are not negotiable. We'll have to see. Just remember, sweetheart, if at the end of the day he says no, I will give up our plans altogether. I'm sorry, Alex. That's just how it has to be. Alex said he did understand, and if she needed someone to do a dry run on, he was always available. With his tacit approval, Clara pretty much spent all of Tuesday and Wednesday at work planning her speech. She started with the basic premise that whatever she did had to be risk-free. It couldn't possibly endanger her marriage and family. She likened it to playing poker shed won a 1,500 pot and didn't want to risk it. She wanted to lock that in a time-delayed safe, so even she couldn't access it. Then she could continue playing, knowing she could win another 1,500, but even if she lost, she still had the original. On Wednesday night, Alex took her to dinner for a full dress rehearsal. After the main course, he told her to give him her best shot. Well, Alex, I've decided to hit him hard and fast tomorrow night. They'll start by reminding him how much I love him, lay it on thick about the kids you know, how I look forward to their graduations, attending their weddings, and grandkids' christenings. Then remind him about the plans we've talked about for our retirement. Alex's mind drifted at this point. Typical woman. She launched straight into the emotive stuff that would work brilliantly with another woman. They never seemed to realize men were far less emotive and more rational. Are you listening, Alex? Of course, Clara. Well, after that, they'll remind him that I gave him an opportunity to participate in me having some harmless fun, but he rejected it. They'll tell him he forced my hand and I intend on taking a lover Saturday night. Before he has a chance to process this, they'll lay it on thick about it being just fun, a bit of unemotional excitement. I'm sorry, Alex, they'll have to lie a bit there. If he wants to prove his love for me, hell, let me do it. I reckon I have a 70-30 chance of him saying yes right there and then. What do you think so far? Alex silently put the odds much lower than this, but wasn't about to say it. He put his odds of scoring this high less than 50%. But what the hell? It was the thrill of the chase that mattered. He reckoned he could have her once with zero risk. Many more times, and the risk of discovery and being sacked for having an inappropriate relationship would rise exponentially. Why do it more than once? Had done this before and realized Head already had 90% of the fun. But by maximizing the chances of Clara succeeding, he might get the last 10%. If I was your husband, at this point, I would at least demand an open marriage. Well, he can forget that. I don't share. If he insists, I will back down straight away. Him taking another woman would end our marriage. That can't happen. You know you have the ultimate weapon to stop him, don't you? What weapon? Threaten divorce and him living in the poorhouse with no access to the kids if he insists on retaliation. No, I couldn't hurt him like that, not even as a threat I have no intention of following through with. Why not inflict a little pain, Clara? It's his fault, after all. If Head gone along with the threesome idea, we wouldn't be here now, would we? At this point, Alex grabbed Clara's hands and looked lovingly into her eyes. Come on, Clara, you deserve this. After 16 years as a dutiful wife and mother, you've earned it. Clara looked into those eyes and felt a warm tingle in her heart. I suppose so. That's my girl. Well, don't get too excited, Alex. If at the end of this conversation I even suspect David is not on board, then I give in completely. Fair enough. So, can you see any flaws? Can you see how I can possibly lose? Alex was firmly thinking about himself as he replied, No, Clara, it's definitely a Nolo situation. He shook his head at the depth of this woman's delusions. While they were waiting for dessert, Clara added a few notes to her outline. When the meal was over, Alex walked her out to her car and kissed her goodnight. This time she didn't resist as he cupped and squeezed her breast, but responded by pushing her leg into his crotch. She felt the twitching of his excitement through his trousers and almost swooned. Alex briefly thought about pressing his advantage, but that would spoil the fun. Okay, lover, they'll book us a room for Saturday night. Can we go to your place? I've never even seen it. No way. The walls are way too thin, and you'll be making too much noise. I can assure you of that. On trembling legs, Clara went home to her family. She was even more distracted than usual. At one point, she realized she was alone and everyone had gone to bed. Consequently, she slept in the next day and only woke just in time to see the kids off. She reminded them she had arranged for David's parents to pick them up for a sleepover that night and check they had all they needed. She had arranged the day off. She had to call Alex at least 5 times to maintain her courage during the day. She knew her major Achilles heel was her inability to lie convincingly. The obvious question David would raise when given her ultimatum was, did she already have someone in mind? In front of a mirror, she practiced saying no. She intended on going out and allowing herself to be seduced. Anything else would spur questions she wasn't at all comfortable with. She convinced herself that by remaining cool, calm, and collected, she could pull it off. So here she was, sitting at the kitchen table, waiting to confront her husband, who was due any minute. It was Thursday night, 24 hours short of a much-anticipated event. The kids were overnighting at their grandparents'. Clara was totally ready. She just kept repeating to herself shock and awe, be firm. Can't lose, I deserve this. David walked in at 5:30 p.m., an hour and a half after his new usual time of 4 p.m. Clara figured he did that because he knew she had the day off. He saw Clara sitting at the kitchen table with a 3/4 empty bottle of wine. She rarely had more than one glass. So David not only knew this was a very special occasion, but that her defenses would be weak. Hey, Clara, what are we celebrating? Did you get that promotion? We aren't celebrating, darling. At least not yet. Please sit down. We have to talk. To Clara's surprise, David beat her to it. I'm guessing this has something to do with the fact you've been so distracted for a long time now? Something to do with the fact you've almost totally ignored your family for the last 6 months? Something to do with the fact that apart from 2 glorious weeks, we haven't been intimate for 5 months? David, No, don't tell me, Clara. Let me guess. You really love me. You are looking forward to sharing the kids' graduations, weddings, etc. with me. You can't wait until we attend our grandchildren's christenings and retire to live a life of love and luxury together. Despite all that, because I didn't go along with your plan of sharing you in a sneaky threesome, you intend on cheating on me with your lover. When? Tonight? Tomorrow night? David paused at this point. Alarm bells were screaming in Clara's head. David had just covered the first page and a half of her notes with stunning accuracy. If she'd been thinking rationally, she would have realized her husband thought much better in a crisis than she did. Head proved it the 2 times head saved one of their children's lives, while she just stood there like a deer in headlights. She was well and truly rattled. In a panic, she reverted to what she knew her memorized and rememorized speech. But I deserve this, David. It would just be fun, David. A bit of unemotional excitement, something to spice things up for us. With no interruption from her husband and in her panic, Clara simply rolled into the next part of her speech, completely forgetting it was contingent on David's expected responses. It was the latest addition to the script, being Alex's suggestion of last night, and she hadn't memorized it as well as the rest. You can't sleep with other women. They'll divorce you. I could make it so you never see the kids. The courts will take all your salary for house payments, alimony, and child support. Clara stopped as the expression on David's face finally registered in her befuddled mind. It wasn't the look of hurt she'd been steeling herself to resist. It definitely wasn't the look of resigned acceptance she'd dreamed about. It was a look of thunder personified. 2. What's his name, Clara? Whose name? Don't play games with me, Clara. The name of the guy who's been playing on your insecurities, flattering you, making you feel young again. The guy who thinks he can just take my wife away. What is his name? Clara was so far off script she was totally incapable of rational thought. She simply responded to her husband's order. Alex. But he's not like that. Not at all. How long have you been seeing him, Clara? We haven't, David. I would never cheat on you. Stop lying, Clara. You've been coming home late every single day for months, going out on weekends, almost completely ignoring your family, and cutting me off emotionally and physically. Was it his idea to stop being intimate with me? His idea to invite me for a threesome just so he could humiliate me? Clara was torn between being offended and horrified. How could she prove David was wrong? No, you've got it all wrong, David. The late nights and weekends were just talking, just going to dinner together. I'm calling you a liar, Clara. What about last night when you came in with your dress all creased and your lipstick all over the place? I know what you look like after a quick session. I've had years to learn. Clara was yelling now, desperate to get him to understand. No, no, no. I haven't cheated, David. I would never cheat. It was just talking, dinners, and kissing. You have to believe me, David. I would never cheat. David stopped and rested his face in his hands. Clara had never seen him cry, and she wasn't about to now. They both sat there stunned for several minutes. David finally looked up when he thought his face was no longer giving anything away. He was wrong. Clara was a perceptive woman and knew eyes closed to tears when she saw them. She was horrified she'd caused this amount of pain. This couldn't be happening. She couldn't lose. Desperately marshaling her thoughts, she remembered her script. Last page, the ultimate get-to-fail-free card. That's it. She would give up her plans with Alex. She would capitulate completely. No harm, no foul, right? The situation was salvageable. Unfortunately, once again, David beat her to it. Well done, Clara. Your betrayal has killed our marriage and our family. Hell, it has killed me. I can't believe you threatened to take my kids away from me. David rose and slowly shuffled towards the door. Something about the way he said killed me sent an extra alarm bell ringing. It sounded so dead and final. David made it out the door and almost to his car before she recovered enough to chase after him. He hadn't given her a chance to play her get-to-fail-free card. He had his hand on the door handle of his car before she was close enough to cry out. But I didn't cheat. David stopped dead. Without turning around, he spoke in a deadpan voice. Staying away from your family to spend time with another man while lying to us about the reason. Going to dinner with him. Kissing him. If that's not cheating, I don't know what is. Clara, it's over. Clara sank to her knees, too shocked and exhausted to support herself. She watched her husband drive off, too stunned to even cry. Can't lose, she reflexively thought back to her preparations for their confrontation. The only time the dissolution of their marriage should have been discussed was when she issued her hollow threat. It had never occurred to her David could dissolve it as well. Clara gave herself the luxury of feeling sorry for herself for a little over an hour. The knowledge she had perhaps terminally ruined a really good thing was just too big a deal to handle, and she shoved it forcibly into the background. This left another big worry in her heart. David's words as he left, but more importantly, his demeanor, had set off all sorts of alarm bells in her head. For the first time, she worried about the effect her ultimatum really had on her husband, a man she knew lived for her and his family. She was terrified he might harm himself. Would he? Shed stated plainly what they both knew in the event of a divorce. He would lose custody of the children and lose most of his pay and assets. They both knew of couples where the ex-wife refused to let the husband see his kids, supported by the court system. Would he contemplate harming himself? Hell yeah. Panic set in. There was no answer on David's cell. She rang her in-laws to see if David was there. He had been but was now gone. They were confused. David had only stayed a little while, then left after hugging all three of the children. Clara jumped in her car and drove around to every bar she could think of in the area, looking for his car. She was so distracted she ran out of fuel and had to call her dad to bring a gas can. He saw she was in no fit state to drive, so he took her home. Once there, she broke down and told her parents David had left her. She could see the hurt in her mother's eyes. Her father's words left nothing to the imagination on what he thought of his son-in-law. Eventually, her mother conceded the logic of Clara waiting at home and dropped her back to her car. Clara went home and, in the wee small hours, fell asleep on the couch. The nightmares finally woke her at 7 a.m. Before she could recover from the grogginess, the panic hit again. She feverishly checked her phone for messages. There were none. She dialed David's cell. It went straight to voicemail, like it was turned off or dead. After all, his charger was right next to hers on the kitchen counter. She rang his work only to be told he hadn't shown. She rang the police, but when she told them why her husband had left, they said she was on her own. By this time, it was 8 a.m., so she got David's address book and phoned every friend she could find a number for. Everyone said they hadn't seen him. She then literally spent all day driving to every possible place she could think of, returning to the house every 2 hours or so to see if David's car was there. It never was, and his cell continually went to voicemail. The only time reality impinged on her frantic but pointless activity was when a message arrived on her phone. It was a simple one from Alex. Hi. Room 77, 6 p.m. You know how you cringe when someone runs their fingernails down a blackboard? That's what Clara's soul did when she read that message. She buried that deep as well. The next phone call was from David's parents. They still hadn't heard anything and wanted to know what to do with the kids. Clara asked them to look after them until further notice. Returning home, Clara sat on the couch and cried and cried. She must have slept on the couch again as she woke with a start at 3:30 a.m. She wept again as the now familiar hopelessness washed over her. She tried to picture David's face but couldn't. She knew then with an illogical certainty that David was dead. She felt insanity beckoning. No, she thought, I can't face that. With practiced ease, that thought was buried deep as well. With dread, Clara got back in her car. As she did, she noticed her cell on the passenger seat where she left it. There was one message from her eldest and 6 from Alex. She listened to the single one just saying she missed her mom but ignored the 6. Clara then spent the time until about 10 a.m. driving around the possible local suicide spots, looking for David's car bridges, ravines, any place out of the way where he could have parked his car and put a hose on the tailpipe. Nothing. Desperate, Clara rang his folks again, and with still no news from them, all his friends again. This time, the call to David's oldest friend, actually an old boss of his, gave her the suspicion he wasn't being totally honest. She looked up his address and decided to drive past his house to see if she could see David's car. He lived in quite an affluent neighborhood. She found the house, but there was no sign of David. As she drove away, her eyes were drawn to a distinctive Tesla 3 doors down. It was Alex's car. It was parked outside another flashy-looking house along with many others. Suddenly, the idea of getting some comfort from a man who was, above everything else, her friend appealed to her. She parked and went up the path to the front door. The sounds of muted party inside told her a Saturday afternoon party was going on. Beside the door was a panel flush with the wall with a security keypad, bell push, and intercom button. She pressed a button. The door was answered by the general manager of her company. "Hello, Clara. Isn't it?" "Yes, Mr. Bennett. I saw Alex's car outside. Could I speak to him, please?" "Of course, Clara. Would you like to come in?" Clara thought of her 2-day-old clothes and haggard looks. "No, thank you, sir. They'll wait here if it's okay with you." "Sure, they'll get him for you." A little over a minute later, Alex came through the door. He took one look at Clara, then looked around to make sure they weren't being observed. He deliberately shut the door, took Clara in his arms, pressed her against the wall, and kissed her. Clara was torn between her need for comfort and her need to blame someone for her desperate predicament. The human craving for comfort won with a compromise. She broke the kiss and just hugged him desperately. "What happened last night, Clara? Where were you?" "Oh, Alex, it's terrible. David came home Thursday night, and it was like he knew everything. He accused me of cheating on him. I told him that we had only talked, been out to dinner a few times, and kissed, but I could tell he didn't believe me. He knew what I was going to say. He even knew I was going to tell him that I planned to be with you last night. I think he may have gone somewhere and done something stupid. No one has seen him since Thursday." At that point, the door opened again, and a furious-looking woman stormed out. "You bastard! Is this what you were doing while I was waiting to move up here? We moved to get away from all this crap. You promised never again." At this, she lost it and went for Alex's face with her fingernails. He put his arms up to protect himself on pure reflex. Clara grabbed the screaming woman to protect her friend. The angry woman, seeing an unprotected target, swung around and, with a tremendous backhand, knocked her against the wall of the house. Clara's back once again inadvertently pressed the intercom button. Briefly, her cry of pain was heard in the foyer. She slid slowly to the ground, stunned. The formidable woman returned to trying to get through Alex's defenses. Suddenly, the big boss came out the door and gently but firmly grabbed the flailing woman's arms. "Come now, Mrs. Walker. Violence isn't the answer. That bitch has been messing around with my husband. Yes, I heard, but there are more civilized ways of sorting problems out than this." He looked from Alex to Clara and back. "You too, my office, 9 Wednesday. He took Alex's wife's arm and led her back inside, closing the door behind him. Alex let out a sob and bolted for his car, leaving Clara still slumped on the ground, suffering from severe brain overload. She finally summoned the mental energy to go home. She rang her mom who, when she heard what a terrible state Clara was in, convinced her father to pick her up and bring her to her childhood home. She cried all night and slept most of the next day before crying all night again. At 11 a.m. Wednesday, the general manager of Clara's company met with his HR manager. "So, what do you want to do, boss?" "I can't really do anything until I get her side of the story. Plus, I promised Mrs. Walker that I wouldn't fire her husband until she'd made up her mind what she wants to do. I know she's taken the kids and gone to her mother's place. We can't fire Mrs. Brown for cause until we get her story, can we?" "No, not really. But she wasn't here today or Saturday and hasn't called in sick. If we haven't heard from her by the close of business tomorrow, she is in breach of her contract and essentially fires herself." "Good, that sounds much cleaner. Did you believe his story that they never did anything intimate, just kissed and had conversations? Who cares, boss? It's still a betrayal, however you look at it." "Yes, you're right. Why can't people just be satisfied with what they have?" The HR manager just shrugged her shoulders and left. By Wednesday evening, Clara had recovered enough to ring the in-laws to check on the children. She thought she had the strength to see the kids now, but didn't want to face David's parents. She couldn't stand the thought their son might be dead and she was the cause. She would ad-lib a way of getting them to drop the children home without facing the music. Shocked is just not a strong enough word to describe how Clara felt when David's mother told her all three kids had no wish to see her, and if she came over, they would call the police. Clara didn't recover in time to say anything before the connection was broken. Clara woke up very confused. She was on the kitchen floor, stiff and sore. She realized with shock she'd wet herself. She staggered to the bathroom and had a long shower. As she was drying herself, the setting sun caught her attention. It had been just after sunset when Shed made that phone call. She rushed downstairs and looked at her cell phone screen. It was 6 p.m. Tuesday. She had been out of it for damn near 24 hours. What the hell? One of the advantages was she felt fresher than she had in days. She used her resurgent energy to resolve she would take back control of her life. The sudden realization David could be dead tried to bring her down, but she managed to suppress it. One of the sources of her strength had always been her children. She decided to go to the in-laws' house unannounced and bring them back. Arriving at David's parents' place, she was surprised to see her parents' car there. As she pulled up, they were just coming out the door. They grabbed her and hustled her back to her car. Clara resisted, screaming she wanted to see her children. Her father told her they weren't there, then told her to follow them back to their place, which Clara did. When she walked in the door, her mom was putting the kettle on. "Where are my children?" "Calm down, Clara. They're fine. David has them," her father said. "You saw David? He's alive?" "Of course. We've just spent an hour talking to him." "Where is he?" Her father looked at her mother. They were obviously uncomfortable. He's taking the kids to meet some people." Clara's mother interrupted impatiently. "Clara, David told us his version of what happened last week. I must say it was much more believable than that fiction you told us. We're both very disappointed in you, not to mention ashamed." "What were you thinking, girl?" Clara bowed her head and remained silent. Her mother continued, "To answer your question, after you gave him no choice but to leave, David went back to work and met an old friend." "Oh God, not Emma." Emily Morgan was the daughter of the guy that owned David's company. She was an ex-girlfriend of David's and had been a minor source of worry to Clara for years. Despite David's reassurances, Clara knew they'd only separated in the first place when Deb was sent to an exclusive business college far away from their hometown. She also knew Emily Morgan was recently divorced. The look between her parents confirmed her worst fears. When she saw what a state he was in, she took David home. He needed somewhere to stay, so he went with her. He's been there since then. Clara, he came and got the kids tonight so they could meet Emma and her children to see if they all get on. David assures us that nothing has ever happened between them prior to this and hasn't happened yet, but they seem to be getting on extremely well. He can't do that. He has to give me a chance. From what he told us, Clara, he gave you plenty of chances over the last 6 months. He said he was devastated you had lied to him about working extra to get a promotion while all the time you were cheating with another man. Who can blame him? I did not cheat. Clara's father broke in. Stupid girl, cheating doesn't just mean intercourse. He said he considered that you had cheated the first time you lied to him about working late and spent time in intimate conversation with another man, and I fully agree with him. They'll tell you, if your mother did that, she'd be out the door. He told us how you'd come home last Wednesday with your lipstick all smeared. Sounds like cheating to me. He quickly found your sordid little notes where you planned to manipulate him into agreeing to let you fool around. He said it broke his heart to see how cold, calculating, and callous those notes were, detailing the carrots and the sticks you pre-planned to use. Honestly, how could you embarrass us like that? I can't believe that you threatened to never let him see his kids and send him to the poorhouse. I didn't mean it. I was going to totally give in if he wasn't willing to go along with it. He never gave me the chance. Clara returned to silence and looked down at the table when she saw both her parents shaking their heads. In the cold glare of her parents' disapproval, she saw things as David must have: the lies, the deceit, the disrespect, and the emotional gulf between them for months. She knew her marriage was over. Her parents gave her time to come to terms with all this. How are the kids and I going to survive without David? Clara's parents shared a sad glance. Her dad nodded at her mom. Clara, David said, had spent the last 5 days asking himself if the children would be better off with you or him. He concluded that because of the threats you made against him, he couldn't risk it being you. Her mom looked at her dad again. He took his wife's hand and squeezed it to lend her strength. I have to tell you, Clara, we agree with him. Look at it from our point of view. If we support you, then there's a chance we won't be able to see our only grandchildren again. Clara was stunned again. They gave her the time to think. She could feel the anger mounting. So, you're betraying me? Her dad couldn't help himself. You started it, Clara. This verbal slap went over Clara's head. I'll fight you all. The courts always give custody to the mother. He can't prove I cheated. I didn't cheat. Clara, he doesn't have to prove anything. He just has to want out of the marriage. The children are of an age where the family court will take their opinions into consideration when deciding custody. They'll tell you, they were there tonight, and if the court had asked them right then, you'd never see them again. And he'll tell you, when I win, you can kiss goodbye to ever seeing my children again. With her last bridge burned, Clara ran to her car and they both screamed off. An interim court order was handed down 2 weeks later. David's employment, relationship with his children, position as primary caregiver for the previous months, new but stable living arrangement, plus the children's wishes, were added to his generous offer of visitation. Balanced against that was a bedraggled mother with no job or work references and no capacity to buy out the necessary half of the family home. The judge ruled with a clear conscience. By the time the obligatory 14 months of living apart had passed and the divorce became final, Clara had returned to much of her old self. Her parents had gladly forgiven her for the angry outburst. Most importantly, she committed to being the best mother she could be for David's fortnight. She even agreed to join David and his new fiancée for a week. When the final paperwork came through, she barely batted an eyelid when the nasty email arrived from Alex blaming her for his divorce and firing. Many nights of pondering and self-reflection had made her conclude the reason her marriage failed was she was just greedy when she should have been happy with what she had. She seized the opportunity to try for more. Really, the only thing that marred her resigned happiness were the nightmares. Initially, they happened every night but were fading to once or twice a week. The worst was what sounded like a church choir singing, "Shock and awe, be firm, can't lose, I deserve this." Nowadays, she seemed to be able to go back to sleep fairly easily by saying to herself, well, 1 out of 4 ain't bad, is it? Thanks for watching. What would you do in this situation? Try to fix things or walk away? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories. See you in the next video.
Jake weighed 315 pounds, and he and Emily had lost a couple of friends from heart attacks recently. She became worried about Jake, and to make a long story short, she cut him off from sex for all but 4 times a year unless he achieved weight loss goals. The 4 times were New Year's Eve, their anniversary, and both of their birthdays. Jake proceeded to lose a bunch of weight over a 2-year period and cashed in on the extra sex along the way as step goals were met but was pretty much deprived of sex. He lost a huge amount of weight and got down to around 200 pounds, and at that point, he wanted to quit. After all, he had lost 115 pounds and it was just so tough. When Jake said he wanted to quit, Emily said, "No way, Buster." That is when she made her threat, the threat that inspired this story. If you quit, you will only be getting sex the 4 times a year. But I have sexual needs, so even though you will only be getting sex 4 times a year, I will have to get my needs taken care of somewhere else. In the moment after Emily made that threat, she saw the foundation of her marriage shake. It started shaking when Jake's head snapped up, and he looked her in the eyes with a look of total shock and confusion. She saw the foundation of her marriage crack as she saw the sadness sweep over him, and the hurt was evident in his eyes, all the result of what she had said. She saw the foundation of her marriage begin to crumble around her feet as sadness and hurt morphed into anger and disgust. She knew then and there that she had made a critical mistake. Emily had pushed this man she loved dearly to the limits to fulfill her desires that he'd lose all that weight, and then she had threatened to have sex with others to punish him for not meeting her goals. How could she be so stupid? How could she have done that to him? Jake was pissed. He said, "I have busted my ass for 2 years to lose over 100 pounds to please you, Emily. It has been difficult for me beyond belief. And during the time you have withheld sex from me as a tool to get me to go on, I did it all for you, Emily, because I love you and wanted to please you. Now, when I don't feel I can continue, you reward me by telling me that you will continue to cut me off and, in fact, get your needs met elsewhere by going out and cheating on me. You may not know it yet, Emily, but you have just ruined our marriage. You have thrown the gorilla out into the middle of our home, and now I don't know if it will ever be caged again. You obviously have had thoughts of having sex with other men, or you couldn't have come up with your ultimatum so quickly. How do you expect me to trust you now? Have you been having sex all along to meet your needs during this whole 2 years? Damn you, Emily, damn you. I don't know what to believe anymore about our marriage. Man, you have just ruined it. That is all I can say. Emily said, Jake, I didn't mean it. I never would have had sex with someone else. Please, Jake, I didn't mean it. Jake just looked at her in disgust and said, How am I supposed to really believe anything you say now? You seemed pretty serious a few minutes ago. Jake got up from the kitchen table and headed out the back door into the garage. I have to have some time to think. The tears started flowing down Emily's face as she lost it. She sat there sobbing because she knew he was right. A seed of doubt had been planted in his mind, and it wasn't going to be easy to make it go away. Sometimes things are said without thinking, and that is what happened here. Emily just didn't think how it would affect Jake. She was so proud of him for what he had accomplished, but she had gotten greedy and wanted more. She thought, It was for me. He did so much for me already, but I was greedy and wanted more, and now I am going to have to win back what I have lost. Jake rummaged around out in the garage for about an hour. There wasn't anything in particular that he was doing, just keeping his hands busy while he thought things through. Jake didn't really think his wife had cheated on him over the last 2 years, but he wasn't sure. Earlier in the day he would have been sure, but now, after her comment, he just couldn't be sure anymore. He didn't know either if she would have cheated on him in the future. Earlier he would have never believed it. But now he wasn't sure anymore. He said out loud, I need to find out. Jake walked back in the house. Emily was still sitting at the kitchen table, looking like hell. Her eyes were red from crying and her nose was red too. Jake noticed and felt bad, but he was determined to follow through on what he had decided. Emily, here is what is going to happen. I am quitting the diet right now. You don't need to worry about cutting me off from sex with you because I am cutting you off. We can have sex the same 4 times a year that you dictated before if you want. If you want to skip it altogether, that is fine too. I don't care. You do what you have to do. Let me tell you, however, that if you choose to have sex with someone other than me, you won't like the results when I find out, and I will find out. Your lover will have his balls kicked up into his ass and stomped into pulp. I am sure I will be breaking a few of his ribs and for sure his nose. I am certain that his eyes will be swollen shut before I am done, so he won't be looking lovingly on you in the future, and depending on how I am feeling at the time, it might even be worse. As for you, if you cheat on me, I will kick your bum to the curb so fast you won't know what hit you. You will be a free woman, able to get your needs met anytime and any place you want. I would never stay married to a cheating 304, so make your own bed there, sweetheart. And just so you know, I'm going to be watching your every move from here on forward. I don't trust you anymore, so you had better be really careful in everything you do. You won't be able to be careful enough, though, to keep me from finding out if you cheat. I'm going out for a while. I won't be home for lunch, but I will be here for dinner if you don't feel like cooking. That is okay. We can order a pizza or some Chinese takeout if you don't cook. Jake grabbed his car keys off the counter and walked out the back door into the garage. Moments later, Emily heard the garage door open and she heard Jake's car drive away. Emily said out loud, "Oh my God, I can't believe this. How could I be so stupid?" She began sobbing again and just sat there, wishing she had kept her mouth shut. An hour or so later, she got up to go to the bathroom, then went and lay on her bed and cried some more. When Jake arrived home later that afternoon, he found her in the exact same position. Like so many husbands who suspected his wife of cheating, Jake decided to do some detective work on his own. He thought the easiest way to start was to drive to the telephone providers and request a printout of call logs on their home phone and on his wife's cell phone. Both were in his name, so he knew he would not be having any trouble getting the reports. The landline phone company told him he could have it electronically, and they were able to upload the call logs for the last 3 years onto a CD for him for a small fee. He gladly paid it and walked out of the office with everything he asked for. Yes, he requested 3 years because he wanted to be able to go back before he had started the diet to see if there had been any motivation for Emily cutting him off in the first place. Next, he went to the cell phone company and requested identical data. They hesitated at first, since it was his wife's cell phone number he wanted the data for, but Jake pointed out that indeed it was a joint account with his name prominently on the records, so they had no reason to withhold any information he might request. They offered the data electronically as well for a fee of $15. Jake thought it excessive but probably worth the money so he could more easily access the information. He did make a note, though, that perhaps he would rethink his cell phone provider in the future. Arriving at home around 4 p.m., Jake saw Emily laying on their bed sound asleep. He decided to let her sleep and went back to their home office, locking the office door so he would not be interrupted. He sat down at the computer and downloaded all of the data from the 2 CDs into a folder in his documents file. He had already formulated how he would conduct his search. He was going to start with 2 years ago and compile a list of every telephone number called in that first month when he started his diet and when Emily had restricted his sex to 4 times a year, plus rewards for goals achieved. That would have been October of 2008. On their home phone, October had 96 calls to 19 different numbers. He found that using the format the phone company had provided for him, he could sort the data in a number of different ways, so he created a list by numbers showing the number, the date, the time, and the duration of the call. Once he got the system figured out, it took him about an hour and a half to create that list for every call made from their home phone in the last 2 years. He was just about ready to start the same process on Emily's cell phone data when he heard the office doorknob rattle. The door was locked, so no one could come in. Jake saved everything he had been doing and stashed away all evidence of what he had been doing. He logged off the computer and went and opened the door to find the most pitiful sight he could imagine. There stood Emily in a seriously disheveled state, hair a mess, eyes and nose red from her crying and sniffling every once in a while. She had her head bent down and only reluctantly looked up and into Jake's eyes. She said, "Jake, I am so sorry for what I've done to you. I know you were hurt and angry with me, and I know I was selfish and cruel to do and say what I have to you. Please forgive me. I know you had accomplished wonderful results on your diet, and I should have had no say in whether you continued or not. It was for you to decide, but I guess I just felt the power of it all and got carried away. Please, please forgive me." Jake replied, "Emily, I forgive you for now, but only because I know nothing more. I love you and I lost all the weight I did for you. I struggled with it for 2 years and gave up the sex during the time all for you in the first place. I just couldn't do it anymore. Unfortunately, as I said, the gorilla is in the room now and I have to know without a doubt whether or not you are a cheater or it will drive me crazy. So if you have not cheated on me in the past and do not cheat on me in the future, we should be okay. But I have to know, so until I feel confident, you are just going to have to deal with it. I didn't create this mess. You did with your quick comment and threat. I can't imagine how you thought I might react to that, but obviously, you never considered how it would make me feel or how it would damage my trust in you, or you wouldn't have said what you did." Emily was hoping Jake would just forgive her and forget what she had said, but that was not to be. She thought, "I suppose I deserved everything that was happening to me, but I hoped it could all go away." She nodded her head slowly in resigned agreement and turned and walked dejectedly back to the bedroom and closed the door behind her. She lay on her bed again, not sobbing, but with tears streaking her face. Jake opened the bedroom door and asked, "Emily, do you want something to eat?" Emily said, "No, Jake, I am not hungry." Jake walked out to his car and drove off again to a place nearby called Greendale. He and Emily had gone there for drinks many times, and their food was excellent. He knew he could have a few beers and a greasy but delicious bacon cheeseburger. In the 2 years previous, he had not had more than 2 beers in a week's time, and not one bacon cheeseburger. Tonight, he was going to give in and have what he wanted. He knew that he would never allow himself to get overweight like he had been before, but tonight he was going to splurge and enjoy his dinner even though his heart was breaking. It was breaking for his wife, because he hated seeing her like she was now, but it was also breaking from the hurt and distrust she had laid upon him. When he got home, he went back to the office and began working on the call log from Emily's cell phone. Because he already knew the drill, it was easier to finish the cell phone list, and he was done in half the time. After reviewing the two lists, Jake determined that over the course of 2 years, they had 3,482 calls made in total from a total of 45 different telephone numbers. He decided to sort the calls by telephone number and had some surprising results. There were almost 300 calls to his cell phone, about 200 calls to his parents' number, and a similar number of calls to Emily's parents' number. There were close to that many to each of Emily's sisters and about half that number to his brother Mike. In addition, there was a scattering of calls to various friends whose numbers Jake recognized and a few to other numbers he didn't recognize. Going down the list, though, he discovered that there were over 200 calls to a number he didn't recognize and another 50-plus calls to a second number he didn't recognize. Then he realized there were some calls, 30 or more, to additional numbers that were made over the course of 2 years. He assumed those might be hair salons, stores, church, etc. None of those statistics bothered Jake much, so he just noted them and went back to the 2 major unrecognizable numbers. Being the type of guy Jake was, he decided to refine his research a little more and sorted the calls by day and time for those 2 numbers. The surprising results gave him the chills, and almost immediately he was burning up with suspicion and anger. Every Wednesday at 11:00 a.m., Jake went to a staff meeting with his boss and other department heads to a local restaurant with meeting rooms. They met in conference for an hour, took a 1-hour lunch break, and finished their business by 2:30 p.m. or 3:00 p.m. Without fail, every week there was a call to him on his cell phone at 10:55 a.m. every week he worked. Yes, there were some weeks that were missed, and Jake instantly knew it was when he was on vacation. But every Wednesday at 10:55 a.m. was the rule. At 11:05 a.m. every Wednesday, there was a call made to the first of the 2 numbers Jake didn't recognize. Oh yeah, he was burning up now. Too much of a coincidence to not be suspicious. He knew at that moment that what he was going to find would not make him too happy. Persevering, he looked at the second number and quickly realized that those calls were all placed on Friday at 1:05 p.m. One Friday afternoon a month, Jake played golf with his brother and each of their best friends. They played 18 holes, which took them until about 5:30 p.m. and stopped in the clubhouse for a couple of drinks before heading home. He was almost always home before 6:30 p.m. on those Fridays. He would shower and take Emily out to eat. What pissed him off was that Emily always called him just before he teed off to tell him she loved him and that she would be waiting for him when he finished his round and got home. He knew what was going on now, but as yet he didn't have visual proof or know with whom she was cheating on him. The scary part now was that he wondered how long it had gone on and if it just started when Emily cut him off or if it had started sooner. So he went back the additional year and discovered that the same calls were made once a month for the 3 months prior to his being cut off. Whatever Emily was doing, she was doing it for 3 months earlier, but not as often. All he had to do now was figure out who and then decide what he was going to do about it. He thought finding out who would be easy. He ran a reverse lookup on the first number and discovered that it was a cell phone number and not listed. He ran the reverse lookup on the second number and found that it was listed to a Tony Miles. Of course, Jake knew exactly who Tony Miles was. He was Jake's trainer at the gym. Emily had found him for Jake in the first place, so Emily was calling Tony on the Fridays when he golfed. Jake noted the address in his call log spreadsheet and decided to go out again for a while. When he got back to Greendale, he sat and had a couple more beers. When things began to quiet down a bit after the dinner rush, Jake asked the rather attractive bartender Brenda if she would do something to help him. He explained a little bit about what happened, and told her he just wanted to find out if the first number was Tony's cell phone number. He dialed the number and told Brenda to just ask to speak with Tony. And if it is him, just tell him some woman gave you the number as a possible trainer. He told her if it is him, tell him that if he has openings, you will stop and see him at the gym one of these days. Brenda took the phone. "Hi, is this Tony?" she asked. "Oh, my name is Jennifer, yes. Some woman who came into my hair salon gave me your name as a possible trainer. No, I didn't know her at all, but we were talking about getting in better shape. And she gave me your name." Laughingly, "Yes, I am 24, I am 5'6" tall, and right now I am a little chunky. I weigh about 130 pounds. I almost feel like you're checking me out over the phone. I know I could tone up a bit and be happier than I am now if I was at 115 or so, but I do look okay, thank you very much. Do you have any openings?" "Oh, I see. One of your clients has recently decided to call it quits and you have an opening. Great. I will stop in to see you in a couple of days and we can work out what I need to do to get the job done." "Thanks, Tony. I will see you soon." Jake was sitting there in amazement at what Brenda just did. She verified that it was Tony from the gym and discovered that indeed he did hit on women that used him for a trainer. She even verified that he had an opening because of a dropout. Jake thought that dropout had to be me. Damn, Emily already called Tony to tell him what happened and to warn him to be ultra careful. The funny thing, though, as he sat there feeling lower than dirt, was the humor in what Brenda had said. He didn't know or care how much she actually weighed. She was hot just like she was. She didn't need to lose anywhere. Jake smiled at her and told her she was too funny and that he thought she was perfect the way she was, so she better stay away from Tony. He said, "No one could have a more perfect body than you do, Brenda." Brenda flashed him the most beautiful smile and said, "Thank you, kind sir, your flattery makes me blush. Honestly, Jake, you are such a hunk. I can't understand why your wife would have looked elsewhere. Any girl would be lucky to have you as a friend and lover." Jake smiled himself. "Well, Brenda, 2 years ago I wasn't a hunk, as you put it, but it still doesn't justify her cheating on me. I thank you for your help, and I would love to stay and talk, but I think I had better get home. I really appreciate what you have done for me, both to find out the information about Tony and to boost my deflated ego, too." Jake went home, and because it was late, he just went to bed. As he crawled into bed, he looked across at Emily and was hit with a feeling of loss and disappointment. He didn't think he had ever been this low in his life, but he was also certain that before it was all over, he would feel even worse. Emily had awakened slightly when he crawled in and said, "I love you, Jake." Jake just grunted at that and turned away from her and tried to sleep. Of course, he couldn't get to sleep right away and just lay there thinking for quite a while. He was certain that he heard a sob or two from Emily, but she obviously had calmed down somewhat. In the morning, he woke up and Emily was spooned against him. He could feel her body pressing into his back, and it made his morning wood even stiffer. When she realized that Jake had woken up, she reached around him and put her hand on his stiff tool. "Jake, please forgive me for what I said and make love to me." Jake knew he was a goner if he stayed in that bed. He never could resist Emily, and he just knew that he would give in if he stayed there and she worked her magic on him. His resolve held, and he said, "No, Emily, I need to get going this morning, and there isn't time. Furthermore, I told you that you were cut off, and that is how it is going to be, so don't try that again." Jake got out of bed, showered, and left for work. Emily said to herself, "Jake, I know I deserve this for what I said, but it hurts too much." When Jake got to work, he mentioned to his boss that he was having a bit of a problem at home. He briefly explained it to his boss and was told to take any time off he needed to follow through on his suspicions. His boss also gave Jake the name of a top-notch electronics distributor that could hook him up with some surveillance equipment. He thanked his boss for the concern and help. He told him that he would be taking off after lunch and would be off the rest of the week, Wednesday through Friday. His boss smiled at him because he knew exactly what Jake was going to do, and he wished him good luck. Jake went to the electronics distributor's location and found out that his boss had called ahead and told them to take care of him with whatever he needed. He didn't think he could handle any visual evidence, but doing some recording was something he could handle. He got 3 top-off-the-line bugs with battery life sufficient to transmit many hours of activity to a receiver within a couple of city blocks when the operator downloaded the data. When Jake got home, his dinner was on the table, and it was something special, his favorite lasagna, with garlic bread and sweet green peas. He thanked Emily for the wonderful meal and excused himself to go and watch some television. Emily cleaned up the kitchen and joined him in the TV room, but she was smart enough to not push in too close to him. At bedtime, Emily headed to their bedroom, and Jake took the opportunity to plant one of the bugs inside their home phone. It would give him a full record of every conversation had on that phone. Both parties in the conversation would be heard. He was a bit nervous about trying to get the bug into Emily's cell phone, but figured, what the hell, just do it, and don't worry about it. It was only a few minutes, and he was done. Now he knew he had a source of information from either phone. The tough part was going to be getting a bug into Tony's phone. Jake probably didn't need to hear any of Tony's conversations with Emily because he already had her phones bugged, but in case she was smart enough to not use her own and went to a payphone or something, he thought he would try to bug Tony's phone. Jake remembered that Tony worked with this well-built blonde woman on Wednesday mornings and usually hovered over her like a hawk the whole time she was in the gym. That son of a witch was getting himself all worked up over that blonde, then sneaking off to screw my wife. Jake thought, I need to get a bug on his phone, and that is just the time I will be able to sneak in there and do it. He will have his nose so far up her crotch, he won't recognize anything else for an hour. He went to the gym and saw Tony's phone sitting on his towel about 10 feet from where Tony was sniffing the blonde. He knew it would be risky to get the phone, but again he said, what the hell do I have to lose? He snuck in and slipped the phone in his pocket and backed out of the gym and went into the men's room. There he was able to easily insert the bug in Tony's phone. The tricky part was going to be getting the phone back on the towel. When he got back to the gym, he could see that Tony was starting to wrap it up with the blonde. He knew that he would never make it to the towel and back without being spotted. Damn, he thought, how am I going to do this? After a few seconds, he decided to just try to slide the phone across the floor to the towel and hope he got it close enough so Tony wouldn't be suspicious. It was all a bit of a risk, but he took it and slid the phone. It made some noise, but Tony was so engrossed in the blonde that he never noticed. Luckily, he slid it hard enough so that it got all the way to the towel, and in fact, it hit the towel hard enough that the leading edge slid under. It was perfect, Jake thought. There was no way Tony could be suspicious now, so he backed out of the gym and got out of there as quickly as he could. At precisely 10:55 a.m., his cell phone rang. It was Emily. She told him she just wanted to touch bases with him before he went into his meeting. Of course, Jake never told her he was off from work the rest of the week, and certainly not that he was skipping the meeting. After about 10 minutes, Jake started to monitor the bugs using the receiver from his car. Tony's phone rang, and he picked up quickly. Tony said, "Hi, Emily, how you doing, baby? Do you want to meet me at my house like usual? I thought you were going to be more careful since Jake was suspicious." Emily said, "I do need to be more careful, Tony, because Jake is really suspicious now. I think we are going to have to quit meeting at least for a while. If he finds out about us, he's going to kill you and throw me out. I can't afford to have that happen, Tony. I love having sex with you, but I love Jake and don't want to lose him." Tony grumbled, "But how can you give up my great tool, Emily? I know you love it and have enjoyed it all this time. It is why you cut him off in the first place, so you could enjoy it more with me. So how can you give it up?" Jake groaned as he heard Emily's response. "You're right. The first time you had sex with me, I knew I would do anything to have you more. For those first 3 months, it wasn't enough, so I did cut Jake off and come to you more. I do love you, but I can't take the chance right now. Maybe in a few weeks things will settle down and we can resume our weekly sex fest, but until then you will have to do it with one of your other girlfriends." Tony responded, "Emily, don't be jealous of my other girlfriends. I have never let them get in the way of our weekly fun, have I? Do you think we can still get together on the Fridays that he goes golfing?" She said, "I am not jealous. I know you need more than I give you, so I haven't cared what you do when I am not with you. Besides, I screw Jake on those special days, and you have never complained. I will have to think about the Fridays a bit. Maybe that will work out. I will let you know if I think I can pull it off." Jake had heard enough. It made him sick to his stomach, but it also angered him to the point that he knew he was going to get his revenge. That witch had been screwing Tony since before he went on the diet, and she even used the diet to cut him off so her times with Tony would be more exciting for her. She had been screwing him every Wednesday and on the Fridays once a month when he golfed. She probably had screwed him more than 100 times in the last 2.5 years. How could she say she loved him when she could so easily go out and do what she had done? He even wondered now if there had been others she screwed. It really didn't matter anymore because Tony alone was enough to end their marriage. He would get his revenge on both of them. Over the next 2 days, Jake made his plans and made a few contacts to make sure the ball was rolling good in his court by the weekend. He monitored the phone taps both days. Emily had called her best friend Janine Thursday morning to set up an appointment for Friday morning. It was a very interesting conversation. "Janine, I need a killer new hairstyle. I want something youngish looking and very sexy." "Why, Emily, you going after another man?" "No, just trying to keep the one I have. Jake is suspicious about me cheating, and I need to get him thinking with his tool again instead of with his head. I'm going to buy some hot new lingerie too and see if I can totally distract him so his suspicions go away." "So what are you going to do about Tony? You can't seriously give up that great sex you've been telling me about." "Well, I might not give it up totally, but I will for a while anyway. And then maybe not quite as often as it has been." They both laughed, and the rest of their conversation was of no consequence. Jake, of course, was devastated by all he heard, but by this time his anger was driving him, and the hurt was buried deep down inside. Tony had called her on Friday when she hadn't called him. "Well, babe, you still want to hold off for a while, or do you want a taste of me?" "Tony, I want it bad, but I just can't take the risk of getting together with you for a while. Please be patient, and I promise we will get back together as soon as Jake gets off this kick." With every conversation, Jake's heart broke more. He couldn't comprehend how there could be any love in this relationship with Emily. It was all selfishness on her part, and no concern for him, and certainly no respect. He wondered where things had gone wrong. Well, his plans were in place, and he would get his revenge. Saturday after lunch, the doorbell rang, and Emily went to answer it. There was a beautiful girl standing there in a cover-up outfit and carrying a small bag. "Hi, Emily. I am Brenda, a friend of Jake's. He mentioned that it would be okay for me to spend a little time by your pool today. I hope I am not inconveniencing you, but I really would like to work on my tan." Emily was at a loss for words, but said, "Sure, come on in and I will show you out to the pool." Brenda noticed that Emily wasn't smiling, though, and a slight smile slipped onto her own face. Sally and Linda rang the doorbell together a short time later. Sally told Emily that she has worked with Jake for a few years, and Linda told her that she had waited on them as a couple, and on Jake alone at Greendale's. They both told Emily that Jake had invited them to come and use the pool for the afternoon. They were both very attractive women, and Emily began to wonder just what was up. She felt a chill go through her a couple of times as she thought about possibilities. All three beauties staked out a chaise lounge and started to spread suntan lotion on themselves. It didn't take them long to agree to do each other so as to not miss any spots. Once they were well oiled up, they lay on the chaises and started to soak in some sun. A short time later, they decided that an all-over tan would be better, and each untied the string on their bikini tops and dropped them on the towel beside the lounge. Emily was pissed and really wanted to tell them all to please leave, but since Jake had invited them, she knew she had to tread lightly because she was already on thin ice with him, so she said nothing. At 3:30 p.m., Brenda walked over to Emily and sat down in the chair opposite her. "Emily, I have to tell you something. I am a bartender at Greendale, and when you dropped your ultimatum on Jake, he stopped in for a few beers that night, and frankly, he told me everything that had been going on with you two." Emily looked startled, But Brenda continued, I think you made a big mistake, Emily, and I, for the life of me, don't understand how you could do what you did. Jake is suspicious of you now and doing a lot of digging to find out exactly what has happened. I think it only fair to warn you that Jake told Sally, Linda, and me that if he discovers you cheated on him in the past, or cheat on him in the future, he is going to start screwing all of us for each time you cheated. Emily's mouth dropped open, and she started to say something, but Brenda cut her off. He also told us that he is going to have some questions for you, and if you lie to him, he is also going to be screwing one of us each time you lie. We all think Jake is quite a hunk and would love to have him between our legs. Brenda knew that Jake was going to screw her because she knew already that Emily cheated many times, and she knew with whom too. She also knew Emily would have to lie, hoping to keep her cheating a secret, so Jake was going to be a busy boy satisfying the three women. Sally also walked over and sat down. I have known Jake for several years and always thought he was handsome and sweet. I know he had gained too much weight, but underneath was still the sweet guy he always had been, and I had a huge crush on him. I still do have a crush, but now there is even more. He is an absolute hunk since he lost the excess weight, and I know you two are having some trouble. I just want you to know that I never made a move on him before, but I am now. He can have me any time he wants, Emily. Of course, Linda was not to be left out. I had my eye on the two of you for a couple of years, and I always noticed how much he showed his love for you. I saw how he doted on you, and that he was always kind and considerate of you. Many times I thought how lucky you were to have such a man, and I wished I could be so lucky one day. In fact, I fantasized that it was me that Jake was with. The guy lost 115 pounds to make you happy and became a hunk in the process. And you do to him what you did? I know I would do almost anything to have a man like him in my bed, so be prepared. Moments later, at precisely 4:00 p.m., as Jake had planned with the three women beforehand, he walked out through the patio doors onto the pool deck and smiled as he saw the four women there. Hi, Emily. I see you have met my three friends, and I also see they have gotten some work in on their tan. I have to say this is the first time I have seen any of these beautiful bodies, though, and I am pleasantly surprised. Ladies, I am afraid you're going to give me a hard time. Emily, how come you don't have your top off? Don't you want to compete for my attention? Emily was terribly upset with the events of the afternoon, but realized that she had better play along. She reluctantly untied her top and sloughed it off. Jake said, Emily, I have a couple of questions for you, and it is imperative that you answer them honestly. At any time during our marriage, have you cheated on me? Emily answered, No, never, Jake. Jake continued, Emily, you are telling me that you have never cheated on me with Tony from the gym? Emily again answered, No, Jake, I have never cheated on you with Tony or anyone else. Where did you get such an idea? Once again, Jake continued, So, Emily, you are telling me that you never cheated on me with Tony almost every Wednesday for more than 2 years, and on the Friday afternoons I played golf with my brother and our friends? Emily was shocked that Jake knew so much about her affair with Tony, but knew her only hope was to stick to her story in hopes that he didn't have any real evidence. So she replied, No, Jake, I don't know what you are talking about. All the while, each of the girls, Brenda, Sally, and Linda, sat there with huge grins on their faces, growing brighter with every answer Emily gave. They knew very well what was about to happen soon. Jake said, Well, Emily, it seems that you are not only a cheater but also a liar. You know you have been screwing Tony almost every Wednesday from 11:00 a.m. until whenever, and I know it. I got a copy of your phone logs from both the landline and your cell phone, and I saw every call you made to me at 10:55 a.m., immediately followed by a call to Tony's cell phone at 11:00 a.m. I know it was Tony's phone because I had Brenda call the number and she was able to verify that it was Tony. I have no pictures of you two together because I didn't want to see that for the rest of my life. But Emily, I know in my heart that a call to him every week wasn't innocent, so I don't need pictures. You are the only one who knows what happened, but I am convinced regardless. Emily was in shock, and it finally hit her hard that Jake knew everything, and she was in for a lot of hard times in their relationship. She started to say something to Jake, and he stopped her. Emily, there is really not much to be said, and nothing that would convince me that you have not been cheating on me. You know how much I love you, but right now my hurt, disgust, and anger are so much stronger than my love for you. I brought these 3 lovely ladies here today so you could see them in all their glory. I want to tell you a bit about each one of them too. Sally, she has been an associate of mine at work for several years. She is such a beautiful girl and sweet as they come. We have worked well together all these years, and I have known for a long time that she had a crush on me. As I got more buff, I saw changes in her that led me to believe she felt even more than a crush. I never came on to her, and I know that even made her more attracted to me. Believe me, Sally, I am very attracted to you as well, but never acted on that because I was married and loved my wife dearly. Sally smiled, knowing that she and Jake were truly friends and both enjoyed spending time together. Linda, I have known for a much shorter time, as I know she told you we only met when you and I would go to Greendale together and she would wait on us. I could tell she enjoyed seeing us together, and only recently did I know she fantasized about being with me instead of you being with me. She is a lovely girl, and I am flattered that she thinks that highly of me. The one thing I have to say further is, doesn't she have the most fantastic tits you have ever seen? I don't know if I have ever seen a more perfect pair of tits. I assure you I'm going to enjoy feasting on them. Emily's face turned red with embarrassment and anger, but she remained silent. I have known Brenda the least amount of time of any of these 3 ladies. I have seen her at Greendale for a while, but never really had the chance to talk to her until you dropped your bomb on me that night. Brenda was a classic bartender and listened to my tale of woe like all bartenders do, but there was more. I could see the compassion in her eyes. I saw pain on her face as I revealed my pain, and I saw anger that a woman could do what you did to the man who loved her. In a very short time, there was a connection with Brenda, and in fact she helped me find out things I couldn't have gotten on my own. By this time, Emily was on the verge of a total breakdown. Tears leaked from her eyes, and her chest rose and fell quite rapidly with her exaggerated breathing. She had so much she wanted to tell Jake, but the words just wouldn't come, and she said nothing. I must say that I am really going to enjoy having sex with these 3 beautiful women, making love to them, and yes, screwing them in every possible way. I know that they have all shown an interest in me and want to be with me. I am in for one hell of a ride, don't you think, Emily? But Emily, I promised you that I would not be unfaithful to you in our marriage. How am I going to screw these hot women if I am still married to you? I can't break my promise. I am not built that way. So the only way is to not be married to you any longer. Brenda reached into her bag and pulled out divorce papers. Emily, I am a bartender at night, but I also have a day job. I am a process server. You have been served. I admit it is the only time I have ever served anyone while topless, though. She giggled with that comment. Emily couldn't hold on to her emotions anymore and burst into tears. Oh, Jake, please don't do this. I am so sorry, so sorry I have hurt you. I will do anything to make it up to you. I love you and want to be with only you. Emily, Jake said, I am having a hard time believing that you really love me, given what you have been doing for over 2 years. It wasn't a couple of times, Emily. I'm sure it has been more than 100 times you cheated with Tony, and I am not sure if there were others or not, but I assure you, it really makes no difference to me if there were. The court hearing is scheduled for next week, Friday, and after we are legally separated, I am going to start seeing each of these ladies. Maybe after a while, I will be so engrossed in the enjoyment and sexuality of banging each of them that I will be able to forgive you for what you have done with Tony. Maybe I will even understand the pleasures that you apparently got from your illicit affair. Maybe a lasting relationship will develop with one of these ladies, and I will find the love and support I thought I had with you. If that happens, perhaps I will be able to stop loving you, and over time, perhaps I can forget you. I hope so, Emily, I really do. Jake told the ladies it was time for them to leave and that he would call each of them. He went into the house to pack a few things to hold him over while he stayed at a hotel until Friday, when either he or Emily would officially move out. Unable to do anything coherent, Emily just continued to sit beside the pool, crying softly now. Jake walked out of the patio doors and set his suitcases down, then walked over to Emily. She didn't know what more there was for him to say, but it became clear in an instant. "Emily, remember what I told you would happen to your lover? It just so happens that yesterday, when you apparently canceled out on Tony, he decided to go for the big busted blonde that he works with every Wednesday morning from 9:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Yes, she was his warm-up girl for you, Emily. It is what got him hot before the two of you got together. He always had his nose so far up her crotch that by the time he got to you, he was really ready to go. I can only imagine how Brenda, Sally, and Linda will get me worked up. I hope it makes me a sexual dynamo for them. And by the way, the blonde was Gina Margarella, the wife of Gino Margarella. It seems that Gino took exception to Tony banging his wife, and he and a couple of his goons worked Tony over pretty good. I think his face is a mess, a few teeth still remain, but not many, and a few of his ribs are broken too. And Gino was so appreciative that I filled him in on what was going on, that he allowed me to be the one to kick Tony's balls up into his body. I think he won't be producing any more hot semen. In fact, I would be surprised if he ever was able to have sex again. And never fear, Emily. I, of course, will deny having any involvement in what happened to Tony. And, of course, Friday was my golf day, and my brother and friends will be a perfect alibi. Have a great life, Emily. I will see you in court next Friday. Emily was left crying that day. She was all alone, and within the next 2 hours her bags were packed and she was shipped to her mother. It took 7 months to get them officially divorced. Emily was devastated and went into a deep depression, and Jake, well, he never did what he told he would do with the other ladies. He never intended to do that. He got himself 2 golden retrievers and found unconditional true love in the end. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like and subscribe for more. What would you do if you found out your partner was cheating? Let us know in the comments below.